Regular City Council meeting for January 27th, 2020. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lisa, let the roll call show everyone is present except for Chief Vogel this evening. And we'll move on to the approval of City Council minutes, January 13th, 2020. Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Kennedy.
Lisa, on page 8, second to last paragraph, last sentence, I believe Councilmember Walton was wishing Pastor Mike Horlocker good luck in Cadillac instead of Pastor Mills. Is that correct?
Yep, that's what I had my corrections.
Also,
Councilmember Richards, go ahead.
Lisa, on my comments on the, council comments on the back, everything was stated. I have no complaints about that, but we missed the whole point on part of it because it should say this is just like the tip of the iceberg, just a selection of different things to talk about, okay, that should go before council. But the point being, it takes at least 2 or 3 councilmen to get one of these items on the agenda. I can't be a one-man band. So when I said take your pick, that's what I meant. If people just look it over and think about it. That's what I meant. Is that okay?
Well, my minutes are supposed to reflect what was said, not what was meant later.
Well, no,
I don't know how you would want me to change that.
well, I think
I can go back and listen to it again, and if there's anything that needs to be changed, I can change it. But.
Okay, as it reads, everything's okay, but I mean, it misses the point. The point is that everybody's got to look at it and come up with some of their own, and it takes 2 or 3. I can't be a one-man band on this, okay? It's got to be at least 2, hopefully 3 people to put something on the agenda. Thank you.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to know for the record that there was no correction made to the minutes as a result of that last comment.
Anyone else have anything for the minutes?
I move the minutes as amended.
I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. No bills this evening. We'll move on to the approval of the agenda.
I'll move the agenda.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. At this time, we'll open the floor for public comment. Please remember to state your name and address.
Hi, folks. Josie Kearns, 329 Lyon Boulevard, with the Cultural Arts Commission. I'm really happy to say that I saw some council members at the soiree yesterday afternoon at the Salem South Lyon Library, sort of celebrating Linda Robinson's whole entire year of every month putting a different artist work up in the library. It just was amazing. A lot of those people were there, and thanks to Glenn Kivel and Kyle Richards for coming to that, and we hope to do that again. And Linda's done a fabulous job. Mostly by herself, which is amazing. She's coordinated all of that. The second thing that I'm here to say tonight is that we have a deadline for the Quilt and Fiber Art Show, which is coming up in March. The deadline is March 9th, but you want to get those in early. People just send 3 images to our email, and just send that to the email at Gmail, and the titles of them and stuff like that. There's no entry fee. So it should be pretty easy. If you are not electronically savvy, like some of us aren't, you can just send the images to the city, and we'll get those, and with your name and address and everything. Sorry, my throat's a little bit weird tonight, and I think you want to say something about
Ryan Lair, 716 Grand Court, Cultural Arts Commission member and Secretary of the Cultural Arts. I also wanted to touch on what Josie was saying. I wanted to thank Linda for all her hard work. It was great to see all the artists and things that she's done over there at the library. It's been absolutely amazing. But I wanted to touch on is that we do need volunteers for take up and take down for the Quilt and Fiber Art Show. We need volunteers, so if anybody's willing to help us, we would sure love your help. We always need volunteers because we're volunteers ourselves. So anybody that's willing to step up, we would greatly welcome your help. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Very much.
All right, we will close public comment and move on to the discussion of downtown with Mr. Donahue.
All right, good to see everybody. I've just got a couple quick notes on the report that I always give to Paul, and then we'll come back to a couple things. Working on the DDA's budget with the board chair, and our goals and objectives meeting is February 13th. So we'll have our piece of the budget ready to go then. The information that was provided to you in the packet in response to your questions from the last meeting regarding the tax abatement. And a lot of that was what we had done similar to a couple years ago. But a lot of that, what we put in there was the background we used for the documents you received last meeting. So really, I think it's for review and prep for the next council meeting on February 10. If you had any questions, but I think we were going to hold until February 10. But I'm happy to any questions you might have on that. Okay. All right. I mentioned we're working on the budget. Our annual report, we're working on the annual report, and that should be out again early, hopefully by next meeting. Now let's go back to the first item was my resignation. I put a copy of my email on the desk that I sent to Paul on the 14th. And I do better with notes because I think just for the public, as you'll see in my email, I want to thank this council and this community for the opportunity to assist in bringing downtown and economic development to a new level. And I was privileged to get the job in June of 2016. But I want to stay on script because it's difficult. I provide, as I say, all is well. I'm healthy. My knee is better than ever after New Year's Eve surgery. But this is my choice. It's a choice I made with my wife and I. She retired 2 years ago. She does adult ed. But we set an agenda for what we'd like to do the rest of our lives, sitting down with that fateful day with Social Security and financial planners. And I still have my health, and so we have an agenda. And I was a football coach for 14 years, and just totally downtown was my whole world for 20, 40 years or more. So this is for the family. This is a family decision. That's what this is all about. No pressure. And, quite frankly, everybody's replaceable. I always have that attitude that every job needs to be replaceable. So that's important. But I truly wish I had come here 5 to 10 years earlier for the great people I've seen here. But I think what we've been able to do is my number one goal was to create a template for what I think this position should be. And to empower the DDA board to be all that it can be, and I think we've done that. My number two goal was to transition the DDA and the Downtown Development Program to a comprehensive management program, not just capital improvements. For years, DDAs were just capital improvement. But there's a lot more to that. It's the people, and it's all the things you have to do to manage it. And I think we've done that here. We've successfully started to utilize the National Main Street Program through Oakland County for community-involved, transparent, ongoing downtown management. I think we've started to hold our annual board retreats, providing an annual report. We have done that. This will not go on forever, I promise. So I know you've got a big night. Number 3 goal was to create an understanding of what historic preservation really is. I know when I started, there's always a lot of anxiety in a community. It means control. It had a bad connotation. I think we've learned successfully over the last 3+ years that we're not going to have a hit you over the head, control you like freaks with a local ordinance. We're going to bask in the glory of just educating people on how important it is without an ordinance and using a lot of resources. So we've done that. We're using guidelines. The DDA, the City Planning Commission, and the Building Department are using the U.S. Secretary of Interior's guidelines and the National Main Street Design Guidelines. And I think I have the feeling that with Paul's leadership, who's very familiar with these programs, Paul, who's been involved with the National Main Street Program, Oakland County Main Street Program, Michigan Downtown Association, I think they have the right person to carry on this transition for what this job should be. My 4th goal was to create a clear, concise set of policies. And and we're not done with all of those, but it was to assist downtown development and to assist economic development throughout the city. So the DDA, as a recommendation body for anything that happens downtown, they're just advisory in most of that, but they should be listened to on all projects downtown. We created, finally, the over-the-road banners with a policy statement. Design guidelines that I mentioned that are consistently used. We're working on a mural policy with Cultural Arts Commission. We need to continue that and get it done. As we're talking about commercial tax abatement, just a policy. We're not making decisions on projects. We want to be business friendly. The liquor license ordinance and policies working with businesses to enforce that liquor license ordinance. Building maintenance, also enforcement policies. So I think we're making great strides. The 5th goal was to eliminate, control, or reduce truck traffic in downtown. We've done that. A lot of people are responsible for getting that done. Goal number 6 was to create a business-friendly environment with full support of our city manager, city council. We have done that. All departments, all consultants, all staff, the policies I mentioned, and the incredible public interface that we have with our staff in City Hall. In 40 years of experience, I've never seen a consistently excellent group of people treat the public. Because it's not all friendly and wonderful what comes in the door. And so they maintain their professional attitude, and they do a wonderful job. So business friendly, we've done it. Goal 7 was to improve planning and funding for all downtown events. We've done that, and we can still do more. Goal number 8 was to establish a face-to-face communication opportunity with monthly downtown business and property owners through monthly meetings. We've done that. And my overall goal was and is to create enthusiasm and belief in downtown's future. So the bottom line, downtown management is never done. There will never be a day when the position isn't needed, because it's like painting the Mackinac Bridge. That crew never goes away. It's the greatest painting job on earth. They go to one end, it's a continuous thing. It's the great analogy of downtown and economic development management. So the next economic development and DDA director, in my opinion, needs to be persistent, a strong leader, a team player, experienced in DDA and historic preservation. Needs to be outside of City Hall, being a people person, building relationships. That's about 75% of the job. It's not a desk job. So, to conclude, I want to again thank you for this opportunity. I totally believe that I'm going to stay involved. If anybody ever wants to pick up the phone, I'm done with 9 to 5. But downtown South Lyon and economic development are just starting to take off here in a very positive way. We're going to keep it going. The future's bright. Thank you. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kennedy?
Bob, I want to thank you for your efforts over the past several years. Obviously, it's had a dramatic impact on the progress that's been made downtown. And we certainly appreciate it. Certainly wish you and your wife all the best in your retirement. You've earned it. You'll enjoy it. Every day becomes Saturday. Okay?
Thank you.
But just one other quick question, if I could.
Sure.
Did we have the follow-up recap critique of the Cool Yule and New Year's Eve event yet, or is it scheduled yet to be
We
had?
haven't scheduled it. Jeff Heinen took his first 2-week vacation in 8 years, and so we're waiting for him to come back.
Okay.
He decided it was important to have a life. And so we're going to wrap that up and have it in February.
Okay, great.
Yep.
And again, all the best to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
Thank you, Bob. I have been one of your most staunch supporters. I fought for an economic development director full-time just after I got elected the first time to city council. I'm very active in businesses. I've represented DDAs in the past and just knew that the city needed someone to come in. I did not have a crystal ball that the individual who would land the job would be as incredible as you are. You are going to be extremely hard to replace. Don't kid yourself when you say everyone's replaceable. You're right. We could put anybody into that job. That's not the point. It's getting somebody who has the credentials. We've done that before. We've hired people that haven't had credentials. You have come on and you've had the credentials. And what a difference in just 4 years you have made in the downtown. So I get it. The businesses have been there. But you have to understand, they have been waiting for someone like you. I will tell you, it's a credit to you. I did speak with 2 businesses that are going to hold off on doing some renovations on their building until they see what the new economic development director is going to be. I think their confidence in you was so strong that they believed in you, they believed in your vision, they believed in where you were going, that I think before they put any money into their business in renovating, they want to make sure that the individual who replaces you is just as good. So if that, I'm not happy about it, but I think what it is a tremendous credit that you had that much confidence in the downtown that people were willing to make the investments, go to the banks, borrow the money, and get on board with the vision, and that is just phenomenal. So it's with sadness that I say goodbye to you at some point because I just think you've been absolutely key to this city, and you will be dearly missed. So thank you.
Anyone else have anything for Bob? Thank you, Bob. We'll move on to the fire chief report and Corey Armstrong filling in for Chief Vogel tonight. Thanks for being here, Corey.
Good evening. 3 things. We had security issues with our computers. Oakland County and IT Right are both working on it. We hired 2 firefighters last week, 1 fully trained and 1 with EMT. And then our waterway valve for our ladder truck should be fixed next week.
Great.
Questions?
Anyone got anything? Councilmember Kivel, go ahead.
Is it, do you have to take the truck to them, or do they come out here to fix it?
The old city mechanic, Doug.
Oh,
I
good.
believe he is going to.
He can replace it, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, terrific. That's great news.
Good.
All right, yep, thanks for being here, Corey.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Move on to the police chief report and Chief Sovic.
I think I'm done with the 9 to 5 too, so I'll adjust my hours and I'll get back with you, Paul. I'll let you know how things are going. Just kidding. Shortly after the change of administration took place in early 2019, supervisors held a meeting to discuss department goals and ways to improve overall operations and morale. The staff overwhelmingly agreed that it was necessary to publicly introduce new employees and recognize our officers more often. We quickly established an awards committee headed up by 3 of our sergeants, and you're going to see that action tonight. First, we're going to start with Lieutenant Douglas Bakke, who's going to introduce the new employees and one of the newly promoted officers to sergeant, followed by Lieutenant Fott, who's going to issue a department citation to 2 of the officers on their shift for going above and beyond. And then I'll introduce another officer who's going to receive the first annual Officer of the Year award, and then recognize one of our crossing guards as well. So,
Can I have Kyle Barron step up, Allison Sycon step up, Officer Mark Mostick and Sergeant Sean Hoydick, please. Guys can stand right over here for me. So I got the forward of the task to introduce some new people here to the City of South Lyon Police Department. We've got 2 new cadets, and basically how we work our cadet program is that we want to get young people that are interested in law enforcement, kind of use them to work for us, and at the same time they're able to put something on their resume to help build them up as well. So it's not a long-term thing. We don't want them hanging around for years and years and years. We want them to come in, get something from us while we get something from them. Okay. The first one that we have is Cadet Kyle Barron, joined our department August 29th, 2019. Kyle is a South Lyon area resident and is junior year at Madonna University studying forensic science. He has attended Madonna on an academics and a lacrosse scholarship. After graduation, he plans to work with a federal law enforcement agency as a forensic scientist. That's Kyle. Next is Allison Sykon, joined our department December 9th, 2019. Allison is also a South Lyon area resident. She is a sophomore on an academic scholarship at Eastern Michigan University. When she graduates, she plans to work for a federal law enforcement agency, and she is actually leaning towards the Drug Enforcement Administration. Officer Mark Mostick. Officer Mostick joined our department this month, the 15th. He retired after 28 years of honorable service with the Farmington Hills Police Department. Officer Mostick brings with him a wealth of experience and knowledge, including taser instructor, firearms instructor, field training officer, evidence technician, and was a member of a drug interdiction team known as Sonic. He also holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Madonna University. He is currently going through the FTO program and is scheduled for solo patrol in mid-April. Sergeant Sean Hoydick joined the department in August of 1990. He was promoted as sergeant in November 2019. He is involved with many different tasks with the department, including armor of the Glock pistol and AR-15 rifle. He is a pistol, rifle, and shotgun instructor, as well as a simunitions instructor, responsible for training and site safety, as well as running scenarios. Sergeant Hoynick is currently assigned to managing the midnight shift and is also on our awards committee. So I'd like to introduce you to our newest members of the police department.
Welcome aboard. Glad to have you. Welcome aboard. Glad to have you. Welcome aboard. Glad to have you. Welcome.
It's hard to say welcome when you're so on.
Yeah.
Say business still bad. How's that?
Hey, nice meeting you.
Good to see you. Hi, nice to meet you. Yeah. Hi, Sean.
And with that, I'd like to introduce Sergeant Vaught for our next round.
So I have a couple officers that happen to be working on my shift that really stood out, and I'm happy to be here to explain what exactly they did and how they stood out and why we would like to recognize their actions. And I'm going to go ahead and read right from this exactly what happened. On October 8th of last year, Officer Audra Baker noticed a young boy named Connor on the sidewalk. He was having trouble with his bicycle. She stopped to see if she could help him and requested that Officer Rapp come and help as well. The officers were able to get Connor's bike operational, but realized it was in very poor condition. The officers discussed how they might be able to help out Connor with a reliable bike. Officer Rapp had a bicycle at home that was in excellent condition, and on October 13th, Officer Rapp brought that bicycle into work and surprised Connor with his newer bicycle. So as you can imagine, Connor was very excited about this, and his mother was also very appreciative. So their actions were not self-serving or done for recognition. They simply wanted to bless a young boy who crossed their path during their daily activities. The awards committee felt the actions of both officers were exemplary, and they displayed how very kind and caring they are. The committee could not think of a better way the officer exemplified our department's mission of strengthening the partnership with our community. So we are awarding the departmental citation to Officers Baker and Officer Rapp for their outstanding actions of a nature which bring unusual credit to the department and its members.
Well, you got to come down here so we can congratulate.
Congratulations, Audra. Congratulations.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Great job, Audrey.
Thank you so much.
Very sweet thing to do. Good to see you. That was awesome.
Continuing with the award ceremony, the first annual officer of the year this year. I'm going to read it. The officer is Officer Timothy Walton. Tim excelled in several areas this past year. His tenacity in commercial motor vehicle enforcement has been exceptional since receiving specialized training. He issued 52 commercial motor vehicle related citations in addition to several warnings to operators and owners. Realizing how important the hiring and training process of new police officers is, Tim volunteered to participate on the new hire oral board. Just as important, Tim volunteered to attend the week-long field training officer school in order to take on the responsibility of teaching and training the new hires. Tim was responsible for training the two most recent new officers and is currently training the third, Mr. Mostek. Tim was involved in administering naloxone to two individuals overdosing on heroin this past year. Both survived. His thoroughness with follow-up investigations was evident and appreciated as he gathered information on cases to present to the prosecutor's office. He is known by his supervisors and peers for his willingness to help others and makes himself available when needed. His effort this past year has not gone unnoticed and exemplifies what it means to be a, quote, team player. Congratulations, Tim.
It's really cool.
Tim, I'll give you this and this, but just...
Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you.
Well deserved.
You're an asset, buddy.
Yeah, great job, Tim.
Good job. A local guy, too. Grew up in South Lyon.
Okay, one more. Fern, come on. I had to bribe Fern to get up here today because she was absolutely would not attend the city council meeting. So I told her she wasn't going to get it if she didn't show up. Fern actually has been our custodian since March of 2019, this year. And so we started talking, and I know as long as I've been here, I've always seen Fern on the corner of Whipple and Warren as a school crossing guard. And so we had to start having a discussion. I said, Fern, how long have you been doing that? I mean, it's kind of a huge responsibility. And so first she got a little bit sassy with me because she didn't want me to her age. Fern's kind of taken on the role of the department mom, so she has the ability to get sassy and nasty with all of us and still with a smile on her face. So we really appreciate her. But I was surprised, but this past September 15th of 2019 was Fern's 25th year as a crossing guard at Whipple and Warren Street. I mean, the weather, the parents, the kids that she has to deal with. So, and the thing is that we'd never recognized her for her efforts before, and that was just an oversight on our part. So, Fern, we apologize, but at the same time, we want to give you this award for 25 years of service. We appreciate you and we love you. So, thank you very much. Happy birthday.
I've crossed the stop sign many times. Probably. Oh, no, no.
I'll-
I
I'll
have
wave
my
next
kids,
time I'm coming
myself,
through
my
'em.
family.
I'll wave on my bike.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Another 10 years, you'll be all set.
One more thing. You guys go to the tape off. Go ahead. You're good.
Chris.
Just to follow up on the in-car cameras, we have been receiving a lot of our equipment. We discussed this at the last meeting, and the very next day, this stuff started coming in. So we're setting up a meeting with the IT right for them to install our equipment. WatchGuard is going to be coming in sometime soon. We have a training scheduled for the middle of February, and tomorrow we're actually taking one of our cars down there to swap out the in-car camera. So it took a little while, but things are coming together. So that's just an update on the in-car camera. So that's it. That's all I got.
Anyone have anything for Chief? Go ahead.
I just happened to notice recently, it seems as though you guys are a great deal more active of just kind of randomly tooling around. I spend an awful lot of time downtown and work in town, so my driving around in the downtown area, it seems like there's an awful lot more presence, and it's not like, it's benign, but you can see you guys rolling through town a lot more now, so.
Yeah, that's intentional, and I'll discuss that more next meeting when we present the annual report. But there's a reason for that. So
Yeah, I figured. Yeah,
thanks for noticing. We appreciate
that's
it.
perfect. I think it registers with people too. So
Chief, I just want to add, I think that's fantastic with the change in that and having everyone out here tonight. I think that's good for morale. I think that's good for our people in the community to be able to see that too. So congratulations, everyone, tonight, and that was really nice.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will move on to old business, number 1, donation policy.
Sorry to dampen all the excitement by talking about these council agenda items now. The first item that we're going to talk about tonight was the donation acceptance policy. In December, I brought before City Council proposed policy. The policy establishes guidelines, standards, and procedures for acceptance and documentation for donations that people would make to the city of South Lyon. The city desires to encourage donations while at the same time consider the impact some donations may have on the city, including aesthetics, ongoing maintenance, and operational costs. And I brought back tonight the discussion regarding the policy. I also have included within the policy the actual donation form. We have had people contact us regarding wanting to donate items, regarding how they would do it, regarding donating funds to ensure that they go towards what exactly that they want to donate for the city. So tonight I'm asking council to approve or not approve the donation policy for the city of South Lyon. And if you have any corrections or changes or recommendations, I'd be happy to discuss those or look at making changes. And if we need to make those changes, then I can bring it back or even approve it tonight if you will.
Councilmember Kennedy, go ahead.
Paul, on page 2, second paragraph, it reads that offers of donations for gratuitous purposes, example, holiday gift baskets, lunches, meals, snacks, etc., to any employee, department, or the city shall be made available to benefit all employees. So this wouldn't preclude those drop-offs that we see pictured from time to time where somebody stopped by the police department, dropped off lunch, or at the fire department and dropped off lunch. They would still be able to do that?
Yes, they still would. I think putting something in there is prevent someone like myself or the chief from taking those items and not allowing the other employees to enjoy them as well.
You can't do that?
So it's your diet
Watch
plan?
out for that, yeah, okay.
Because, yes, we do have people that want to donate things, and we just want to make sure everybody can enjoy that type of thing. It's not really made for one individual or anything like that, because we know people want to express their gratitude towards departments or individuals, and we certainly don't want to stop that.
Great, thanks.
Councilmember Dode?
I don't think this should stop voting on it. I just had an thought on the donation form. I don't know if you wanted to have anything at the bottom that was kind of administrative, like if it was approved, it was accepted, if it was referred on to council, what the action was on it.
If it
Unless I'm
follows the
missing
guidelines within this, I wouldn't necessarily, bring it before if somebody wants to donate $50 to council. I mean, I can make that recommendation, accept it. I think there's been some things done in the past, but that administrative thing, I don't think is necessarily needed. If somebody says, I'm going to donate $50 to, the Parks Fund or something like that for the wheelchair swing, I don't necessarily think we have to bring it back. It's always nice when you have an event, perhaps, when you purchase an item or whatever it may be, this item was purchased with the donations, and then you would list those individuals that did in fact make those donations.
I think you might not have understood what I meant. All I was saying is if there was something on here, maybe there was something on here to indicate what action was taken. Unless I am not reading that right. Like if you have this donation form and then.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking if somebody was actually submitting this form that we would be accepting it, but
Okay.
you're absolutely right. I mean, we could initial it and date it and stamp it and that kind of thing. I think
Okay,
that would be
yeah.
appropriate.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Yes, I had sent a communication to you, I don't know, about 8 weeks ago, regarding an interpretation of GASB 84 and its implication with the donation policy. And GASB 84 deals with fiduciary activities. And, I think what happened was at the time, the proposed council rules were coming out, and it sort of was discouraging council members from having contact with our third-party vendors. So I didn't contact Plant Moran. I sent you an email instead.
I don't recall that email regarding GASB 84, and I'm not sure, maybe you can address what you're speaking of. Are you saying that we should not be accepting donations, or
No.
what are you relating it to?
No, what GASB 84 says is that you have to make it, and this was my question as to the donation policy, is that when you start a donation policy, somewhere in there it talks about restricted, you're going to restrict the use of whatever that donation is. Does that restriction now become an activity that is a fiduciary activity under GASB 84? Because if it is considered a fiduciary responsibility, it now has to be included in the financial statements.
Yes, I would agree. It does. And we do have already within our budget line items for donations. And if they are specifically for something, we would definitely dedicate it towards that particular department or dedicate it for the particular fund. And therefore, it would be listed within the financial documents. And we already do receive donations with the city, so we already have that in place. This is merely the policy of us accepting items or accepting donations and ensuring that they do in fact go to the location where they want them to do. So we already have that actually in place.
Okay, the issue is whether a restricted account in the budget where you are restricting the use of those funds becomes an activity that implicates GASB 84.
Well, okay, maybe I'm not answering your question, and I'll
Yeah.
gladly look at that and how you want that answered and how your email
Well,
came
I
through,
could
so.
call him tomorrow night,
No, we'll do that. That's not necessarily
and
do,
I'll
but
have the
we will
answer tomorrow.
contact, so.
So,
We will contact our auditors regarding that.
that was the question, because it had audit implications.
Councilmember Richards, go ahead.
Paul, in Article 6, here, 6, right to reject and accept all donations, including those accepted by the city manager or his or her designee. Okay. In the event that somebody wants to donate an article, okay, not necessarily a cash donation, but they want to donate something that the city may or may not want, okay, and it's out of state, and it's in an estate, they passed away and they make a donation. I'd like to donate, a scissors lift or something to the city of South Lyon, or my drones or something like that to the police department. What's the policy? Do we have a list of things available that the city would rather not have donated to it, or is the door wide open to whatever a school bus, for instance, okay, or something coming our way. What's the posture on that? How do you read that, okay?
Well, I'm not going to create a list necessarily to say what we can and cannot donate, so I think it's on a case-by-case basis. If somebody wants to donate a school bus to the city of South Lyon, we would look at that and see if there is an actual use, then tell them, no, perhaps we may not have a use, and here may be another avenue for you. Or if somebody wants to donate a statue and say, here, I'm donating the statue, but it has to appear in front of City Hall, that is something that we would have to look at and consider. Is that something we actually want to take or not take? Each one's going to be on a case-by-case basis, and we'll have to look at. It's just that we've been getting requests where people would like to make donations of items or benches, perhaps, and if they are in fact going to donate a bench, we have to ensure that it's not a $32 bench that they want to put within the park that we know is going to require a lot more maintenance than just $32, because the benches that we have usually within the park are usually several $100s, and we want to make sure they do in fact last. So that may be the instance where we say, if you'd like to make a donation for a bench, then we will include this, and then at a later date we may be purchasing it if you only want to donate $25 or something like that. So everyone's going to be on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, go ahead.
Councilmember Kibble.
Well, I think that language is important, though, the right to reject a donation. I mean, so we have some legal standing where we're not going to offend people, and, I mean, they may well be offended, but at least we'll be protected by the fact that if we don't have a specific use for it, or find that it fills a need that we have, that we don't have to take it and have the responsibility of keeping up with something that was donated just because it was donated.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think also, with respect to Section 6, I just want to make sure that when we're talking about rejecting, does this mean that every donation that comes to the city, you bring to City Council?
I would say no.
Well, what happens if you get a donation from an organization that is considered obscene? And maybe there
The
are...
donation is obscene, or the organization?
The organization is, and we don't want that money in our city coffers.
Then I suggest you discuss that, because I to be discriminatory that someone might interpret them to be obscene or somebody else might not, does not, I really know how to handle that one. I've not really even thought that would be a possibility.
Well,
I think about a specific item perhaps, but a donation from an organization, that may be something I guess to consider.
I mean, I would think at least council should know of it. Say we get a contribution from a foreign government, and we don't want that money in our coffers. Maybe somebody has connections with a country, and they have decided to provide money, and we're not interested in that money coming through our coffers. Say you have some very, very racially motivated organizations that want to provide money for things that we want to put in the city. We're not necessarily interested in those kinds of organizations having influence in our city with respect to their rhetoric or whatever.
Then I can fully bring something like that. And if I'm made aware of an organization that is inappropriate or something that we would not, then I would discuss that with you at City Council, and whether through discussion at a meeting or how we go about that, even discussions with the attorney regarding some of those things. We have to be very careful whether something like that's going to occur. I don't know. I'm not expecting it to, but it doesn't mean we can't be prepared for it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kennedy.
And I think the verbiage there that says that the council will have full and final authority to accept or reject all donations does that. I'd like to make the motion to approve the new ordinance donation acceptance policy for the city of South Lyon.
I'll support.
We have a motion by Councilmember Kennedy, supported by Councilmember Kibble, to approve the new donation acceptance policy for the city of South Lyon. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Old business number 2 this evening, City Council Rules of Procedure.
At our December 9th meeting, I presented to City Council draft rules and procedures that I feel should be adopted by City Council to ensure that we have an efficient operation of our city and our meetings. In this document are rules addressing meetings, agendas, minutes, parliamentary procedures, comments, relationship with city staff and consultants. Since that meeting, all City Council members provided feedback, and last week I provided the City Council all of the comments that were submitted. Tonight, I'm requesting the City Council proceed in reviewing and discussing the rules of procedure and develop a timeline for possible adoption.
City Attorney Lisa, would you like to give any sort of feedback on this, on how we should move through this document tonight?
I went through these. There are comments on a majority of the provisions. My thought is that we talk through some of the comments, get some sort of consensus, move on to the next item without any motions. Ultimately, you want one document that's approved by the council, so I think that's probably going to be the most efficient way to go about it.
Okay, I agree. So, council, as long as no one has any objections, what we'll do is we'll start with number 1, and we'll treat each one as it's kind of its own topic, and then move along when we think we're ready. With that being said, we will start with number 1, city council meetings. Does anyone have any feedback on this?
Mayor, would you like me to read each one and then, as it comes up?
You know what, Paul, I don't think that would be a bad idea.
Okay, just for everybody.
I
in the
appreciate
audience-
that.
in the audience, perhaps
Public
they may
should-
want to.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea.
Tonight, the first section is city council meetings. All meetings of city council will be held in compliance with City of South Lyon Charter and state statutes, including the Open Meetings Act, Public Act 267, 1976 as amended. And with these rules, all meetings of council will be open to the public and authorized by the Open Meetings Act. Seating arrangements for mayor, mayor pro tem, council members, consultants, and staff shall be determined by the mayor and the city clerk.
Councilmember Kivel.
I don't care where I sit.
Sorry, we're going to go to Councilmember Dilg and then over to you, Councilmember Kennedy. Go ahead.
The first thing on here was mine. I just thought maybe it would make sense to have something to say that is subject to change as deemed necessary by the mayor, just to give some flexibility there. And I think there should be a stipulation for members to make a request if there's some particular reason somebody wants to sit in some specific place. I don't care, but somebody might. So that was my statement. I just thought that might be a good addition. I won't die on that hill.
Councilmember Kennedy.
The mayor is the head of the council. They can make a recommendation, they can make a suggestion. It's the mayor's discretion and determination as to whether or not he determines that the concern is viable or not, and he determines where people sit. I'm good with that.
Are we going to go right on down the line?
Oh, they asked to speak and be recognized, so if you'd like to be recognized. let me know.
Well, on number 1, city council meetings, I don't have any objections to it. I hope we can work it all out, and unless we've had I don't see where we've ever had a problem. Okay? But I'm satisfied with how things are working at this time. And I'll pass, I yield on that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't see your hand
That's
there.
okay.
Councilmember Walton.
Thank you. The only comment I have is I actually agree with what Steve just said. I think that ultimately it's a decision of the mayor if need to be. We can all put in requests. We can all just, if we need to say something, we say something. But I think that the mayor makes the decision. I don't know why the city clerk or the city manager or anybody else needs to get involved.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
I'm a little bit more democratic about it. I think if people want to sit, they sit where they want to sit. I did talk to a couple of other cities where the clerk made a decision, and the reason the clerk's making a decision is because people couldn't agree where they wanted to sit. That was the problem. So they finally said, okay, this is who it's going to be. I don't think that you have an environment or an atmosphere of being on a team if you have one person saying this is where you're going to sit. I mean that almost feels like you're in second grade. I would agree. I don't think there's been a problem. I think that I agree with Councilwoman Dilg, is that, if we have a request and we want to sit in a certain spot because we have certain reasons and we're able to articulate those, then I think those should be respected. But I think this is a team, and to sit there and say, you are 2 years old, I'm going to tell you where to sit at council, when I don't even know why this is here, because I think it generates a little bit of tension when you bring the things up that aren't even an issue. I mean, I haven't heard one person complain about where they're sitting. I don't know, maybe it's going on, I don't know. I just tend to be a little bit more, not micromanage. Micromanage where you need to micromanage, and stay out of micromanaging where you don't need to be. If it becomes a problem, then maybe you address it 2 years from now, and you make changes. I'm just going to give you my philosophy on drafting. It's a process. You're never going to get it right the first time. You're never going to get it wrong the first time. But start somewhere and stick with the battles that you need to fight, and stay away from the battles you don't need to fight. And if you need to fight a battle down the line, then fight it, come back, amend it, change your document. But to pick your battles so early when you don't even have a battle, I guess I don't understand it. But that's just, whatever.
Councilmember Kennedy.
I'll go back to the fact that the mayor is the ultimate point of decision on this. 6 people want to sit on the right-hand end of the table. He's going to make the decision who gets to sit in that position. Okay? Well, I don't care if he does it by straws, by drawing straws or whatever, but he's going to be the one who decides. So the fact that we have on here, the mayor will decide, and if everybody wants to sit and there's no conflicts, that's great. If all 6 people gravitate towards one seat, then the mayor will decide who's going to sit in which seat. And that's the way it's written, and I think we should go with it the way it's written.
Councilmember Dilg.
I don't need to talk.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councilmember Kivel.
Well, it seems unlikely to me that the language would have been put into this document if there hadn't been some desire for the ability to move the players around. So if there's dynamics that can be articulated, it would end up being helpful to understand what they are. If not, I think it's pretty benign to begin with. So the idea of having the mayor be the one that would ultimately have the say on that, I think, is perfectly appropriate. I would like to have an understanding of the motivation for a change in the event that there is one. There is a change. So,
if I may just briefly discuss, this is a standard item that's within council's rules and procedures or governing bodies, and whether it's determined where people sit by the chair, by a lottery, by precincts, by length of service, drawn a ball or number out of a hat or whatever it may be, they do so many different methods. This was brought up at a meeting in 2019 regarding seating arrangements. When that was brought up, it was also discussed to me or expressed to me by council members regarding that statement that was made at the meeting. And because of that statement that was made, it was included within this because it was deemed to be that someone who wanted to talk about it or somebody had concerns regarding seating arrangements. Usually in seating arrangements within council members, or council boards, there is the mayor that usually sits, or council president sits within the center. Immediately to the right or to the left is usually the mayor pro tem. That's so if a council member or the mayor is not there, nobody has to change any seats. The camera just zooms in on that particular person. Nobody has to move seats or anything like that. They're there standard. And that's just been how it's been. And I'll just tell you that from just working in 6 different communities over the years, that's how it's been. Now, these rules and procedures were looked at. These were discussed. I got a lot of input from council over the year based upon certain items, and that's why some of these things are written the way they are. Council members may express some things. I worked with the city attorney who looked at other jurisdictions and how the rules and regulations were written, and that's how some of these things are prepared. So each one of these is a little bit unique, but it's not unique in the fact that they are within rules and procedures within the council, and it's just a standard operating sort of procedure, and it's just one of those housekeeping items, and I would be neglecting my duties, or the attorney would be, to not include something like this, even how menial it may be. It's just something that is included within most procedures. So that's why, in fact, it is there.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to my earlier statement, is that I don't care if somebody makes the decision, but not the final decision. I don't see where there is any allowance for input from council members when there's been no problem. I mean, that's my concern. You have no problem, and all of a sudden now, what are we going to do? Are seats going to change tonight? Are they going to change next week? I mean, are we going to play musical chairs for the next year because it didn't look this good on the camera when we looked at the video, and we think we're going to move this person over here because the optics are better? I mean, everybody seems to be getting along where they're at. I'm just not a micromanager. I mean, that's just me. But I get it.
Councilmember Dill.
I see this as kind of the same way that I said about the tax abatement thing. I think this is a rule to have in place in case we need it. Nobody's saying everyone's going to, after we talk about this, everyone's going to stand up and move chairs. But there could be reasons why we need this, and we don't need to, then if we don't have this rule, or we don't have, someone saying this, it will be impossible for us to make a decision. I think there needs to be a rule in place so that if there is a problem, or for some reason the mayor, he or she, can make the changes necessary, is how I see it.
I think it's important for all of us to go ahead and take a minute and imagine the community down the road, and you're not on this side of the table, okay? Mm-hmm. These are supposed to be a little bit of a template to help people operate in a council, mayor, city manager type government. And so while you may have a problem with it, that's fine. I think it's going to be better for all of us moving forward tonight that you try and think of yourself as what's in the best interest of this community going forward is kind of where I'm at with it. And there's going to be a lot of these. That's why we're doing it. When City Attorney Wilhelm was here, he had mentioned to me several times that there were problems with certain things because nothing's on paper. There's Robert's Rules of Order, and then there's the city charter, and there's nothing blending those two. That's what this document is. My understanding is what this document is supposed to do. So, Councilmember Kurtzwell.
I do just want to make a correction. Not all governing bodies said the mayor pro tem sitting next to the mayor. And the reason for that, as was explained to me by one city council member in another city, is because it implies that the mayor doesn't know what they're doing. So what they do, the mayor pro tem is there only to run a meeting in the absence of the mayor, and that it does not strengthen the mayor's image when the mayor pro tem is to the right, because it has certain visual and optical implications. I never, when I was mayor pro tem, mayor didn't need me sitting next to him. He knew how to run a meeting. He's done a good job. The only time I needed to be in the middle was when he was absent and I ran a meeting. So to say that mayor pro tem has to be up there, here, and the treasurer next to that, or whatever, that just, to me, that's just narrative stuff. That doesn't hold water, because the function of the mayor pro tem is only to run a meeting in the absence of the mayor. And at that point, the mayor pro tem sits in the mayor's seat. You don't have to shuffle any chairs. That's where the person sits. That's it. Maybe once a year, your mayor pro tem is called into service. Other than that, the mayor pro tem stays out, because you don't want to be confusing the responsibilities and the authority of the mayor and the mayor pro tem. The mayor runs the city, not the pro tem.
So we had a couple of people ask for the floor. Councilmember Kivel, go ahead.
Yeah. The perception of someone seeing that the mayor pro tem sitting next to the mayor as because the mayor's on shaky ground is just ridiculous. So the notion is really, we're here to create an environment where the changes are not going to end up being an alarm to anybody. It just simply gives us the opportunity to have this take place. So however it ends up getting fleshed out, I don't, like I said earlier, I don't care one way or the other, but this enables this council and future councils the ability to take action in the event that they see the benefit of this being, of moving the chairs being in the best interest of the council and the community.
Excuse me, Mayor?
Yes.
It sounds like, based on all the comments, that the general consensus, sorry, Maggie, Councilman Kurtzwell. The general consensus is that everyone's okay with this. I wrote down a couple of suggested changes. I don't know if you want to talk about those. The two were adding subject to changes determined by the mayor, and the other one was whether council members may put in a request for seating and an explanation as to the reason. So maybe those are what we should focus on, because it sounds like this is staying in at this point, and maybe we move on to these two suggestions.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Dilg, you had asked for the floor?
No, I don't need any more.
Councilmember Kennedy?
I think that's a worthwhile suggestion. And again, all we're trying to do is establish a set of standard operating procedures so that the next, member that's elected to council knows this is how the council operates. Okay, and it's not something totally unusual. I mean, most cities have a set of procedures like this. Okay, so again, I agree with the attorney. I think for the most part, the majority of the people up here are in agreement with the way it's written, where the mayor's making that determination. People want to provide their recommendations. That's fine, but I think we need that as a starting point.
Councilmember Walton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to bring up a little bad blood for a moment, but the only thing I can remember from 2019 with seating arrangements was removing someone off of this table into the back of the room. And I personally did not agree with that. I think that if they were voted on, they need to sit at this table. We can move people around as we need to based on this verbiage, but I think that they need to stay at the table.
That's a whole different animal.
Yeah, I don't think
So that was a total unusual set of circumstances. It's not, it had to do with, personal protection orders, not being within a certain, proximity to another council member, et cetera. That's a one-off situation. It wasn't that somebody was sent to the back of the room for being a bad person. Okay? There were reasons for it. He couldn't get clarification on it. It was addressed at the following meeting. End of discussion.
Councilmember Dilg?
I personally think that we're done with this one, and I'd like to suggest we move on.
Okay. No objections to that?
No, nope, I think we're good.
Okay.
Next one is A, regular meetings. Regular meetings of the City Council will be held on the second and fourth Mondays of each month, beginning at 7:30 p.m. The council chambers of the South Lines City Hall, unless otherwise rescheduled by resolution of the council. Council meeting shall conclude no later than 11 p.m., subject to extensions by council. We've never really had a problem regarding the 11 p.m. This was just put in just based upon other ones that I viewed. It had a time frame for it. If you want to have it in there, that's no problem. If you don't want to, that's fine also. It was just a particular time and discussion wanted to take place. At a certain point, council members, whoever it may be, staff, there's a certain point of diminishing returns. And that 11 p.m. number was just, time frame was just put in there.
Councilmember Kibble?
The subject to extension by council is the trigger. I mean, if you're getting really close to finalizing, I certainly wouldn't want to end up giving up because we had 10 more minutes worth of discussion to take place. So, and it's probably not a bad thing to have the 11 o'clock be the trigger that you have the opportunity in the event that things look like they might end up actually going really long, and it's not emergency kind of circumstance. You may end up deciding that it would be more prudent to just do it at the next meeting. So that's all I had.
Councilmember Kennedy? Did you want to be recognized?
No.
Oh, I'm
okay.
sorry.
Oh, sorry. I agree.
I agree too.
Does anyone else have any further discussion on this one? Okay.
The next item B was special meetings. Special meetings of the council may be called by a clerk upon the written request of the mayor, the city manager, or by 2 members of council. There should be at least 18 hours written notice to the public and each member of council designating time, place, purpose of a special meeting and serve personally on or left at the usual place of residence of each of the council members. No business shall be transacted in any special meeting of council unless the same has been stated in the notice of such meeting. However, other than the enactment of, by an ordinance, any business which may become lawfully before a regular meeting may be transacted at a special meeting if all the members of the council present consent thereto, and all the members absent file their written consent.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Mayor, I note that there were some questions and comments on this provision asking for clarification, so if you don't mind, if I can
Please.
clarify. So a lot of the other enabling acts for communities actually have language in there that says that says you can't add an item to a special meeting agenda unless everybody's there. For obvious reasons, because you don't want to miss something that you want to be there for, but the agenda for the special meeting didn't have it, and they just come to the meeting and add it. While you're absolutely correct, whoever asked the question, do you have to be present to vote? Absolutely, you have to be present to vote. That's not what this is. What this is saying is that you can add something to a special meeting agenda at the last minute, even though it wasn't on the agenda, as long as every single council member consented to adding it. That way, if I was not planning on making it to the meeting and you add something that I'm very interested in, I'm not going to give you that consent. So some other, like for example, the Charter Township Act specifically says in there, everybody has to be there. It doesn't give you an out. Now, I've looked at the Cities and Village, the City Act, the Home Rule City Act. I've looked at the Open Meetings Act, and I've looked at your charter, and you do not have a comparable provision. So you don't have to put that in there. I just thought it was a good mechanism for your protection.
Thank you for that clarification. That makes a lot of sense.
Makes it much more clear.
Councilmember Kivel, you had made a motion or asked for the floor.
Well, actually, it was in regards to that. The agree to the decision made in their absence. So are you suggesting that you'll be contacted if you're known to be likely be missing in that meeting? Someone will contact you to ask for your permission?
Yes.
Okay.
There's an affirmative responsibility on the organizers to ensure that you don't have an objection, that you consent to adding something to the agenda.
I actually like that idea, because if you made an agreement to some commitment because you knew that whatever was going to be handled was not likely to end up being controversial to you, but in the event that the circumstances changed, I would want to have the ability to end up weighing in on that. So,
anyone else have anything to add to that? Okay. Paul?
oh wait, you know what?
Go ahead.
I would
Councilman
like to
Kivel.
ask one more thing. I had it highlighted. I'd resist action being taken at a special meeting, except if it was an emergency. So, I mean, we're having a special meeting. I'm assuming it's because there's a great deal of discussion that's the reason why you want to end up allotting the time for that particular aspect. But to me, unless it's an emergency, there really isn't any reason we should be conducting business outside of what our scheduled calendar is.
Councilmember Kennedy.
The special sessions that we hold for determining, laying out the budget, and that would probably fall into this category perhaps.
And we don't make any decisions at those,
We work the budget.
right?
You identify what's going to be in, what's going to be out, and then the budget's brought back to make the decision. But we're working what's going to be in and be out. So we are making decisions. We're not approving those decisions till we have a follow-up meeting.
Right.
But you would be good with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's not a conclusion, that's
Right.
simply,
But we're working the issues
Right.
and refining it. Okay.
Councilmember Walton, did you have one?
No, I didn't have anything, thank you.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Well, in special meetings, you sometimes do make a decision. That's the reason why you're having the special meeting. If you're not making a decision, then you call it a workshop or a study session. But if you're going to have a special meeting, if it's being noticed up, I would think that if it is a special meeting, it's for a specific purpose, even with the budget. We make decisions at the budget meetings. We don't sit there and say, well, I'll wait until we get to a city council meeting, and we make very definite decisions at those budget meetings, special meetings. So I just want to make sure we understand what we're doing at those special meetings. Sometimes, depending on your notice, sometimes the special meeting will be called for something other than a meeting where a decision will be made. Sometimes your special meeting notice goes out because you need a decision made. So I think you have to be flexible.
Okay. Any other feedback on this one? Okay. Paul?
C, closed session. Closed sessions may be held only for the reasons authorized in the Open Meetings Act. A two-thirds roll call vote of members elected or appointed and serving shall be required to call a closed session, except for those circumstances where the Open Meetings Act permits the calling of a closed session by a lesser vote. The purpose of the closed session must be stated in the motion to call the closed session. City council members shall not divulge to any unauthorized person confidential information discussed in a closed session in advance of the time prescribed for its authorized release to the public by the city council. Council members shall honor the confidentiality of the debate and discussion occurring in closed session and be aware of the potential liability or other harm to city by premature disclosure.
Lisa?
This is important, and some of the questions that came out obviously are concerning. You go into closed session for a particular topic, the topic that you articulate in your motion to go into closed session, and that's the only topic you should be discussing in closed session. There's no, in my mind, there's no reason to put that here, because that's the law. I mean, that's potentially a violation of the Open Meetings Act. And I know that those were some of the comments, so I just wanted to make that clear.
And one of the main reasons, Mayor, that I brought this was to ensure that we can and do have certain needs for closed sessions. And I know things have been discussed within the past year regarding not wanting to call them or call them. There are special needs that we may have to call a closed session to make certain decisions that need to be made. If we are not allowed or afforded that opportunity, there may be times that council may not be involved in the decision-making process regarding something that may be coming at a later date. And there were discussions that took place regarding that people would not vote for one, would vote for one in certain instances. And I want to make sure if I'm in fact bringing an item for closed session discussion, it's within the Open Meetings Act requirements, the council does heed my reasoning behind this and will look at this and make a decision regarding the closed session. I'm only bringing it before you because we feel the need to have those discussions take place. And I wouldn't be doing that with other consultation regarding with the city attorney or clerk regarding based upon other decisions that were made at city council.
Councilmember Kurtzwell, you asked for the floor a moment ago. Go ahead.
This, I think, is one of those, has nothing to do with personalities, so I want to get that out there right now. I think this is ideology. I think this is where people, certain individuals like myself, what our opinions are with respect to open meetings and the range in which I feel comfortable going into a closed meeting. I think it's important to note that 15.268, which talks about closed sessions in the Open Meetings Act, clearly says that a public body may go into a meeting. It's permissive. It's not mandatory. So I think what happens is people sometimes feel, like you, that you are entitled to that closed meeting because you feel that that meeting has a certain level of whatever. You have to read this section. This section clearly says only these items are going to be considered critical or should be considered going into a closed meeting. You could have litigation, 5 different lawsuits going on at the same time. You are permitted to go in and discuss trial strategy in that closed meeting. That is permissive. It's not mandatory. You do not have to go into a closed meeting to discuss that trial strategy. You don't have to do it. I've been to 3 or 4 seminars on this, and that's the problem. People feel they are entitled to the closed meeting. The language clearly makes it permissive. Should we go on certain issues? Maybe we should. Maybe there are those times. But I just want to get it out there. It is not in the Open Meetings Act that under any circumstances it is mandatory that we go into a closed meeting for any one of these items that are listed here. It's not mandatory.
Councilmember Kennedy?
And so it reads, closed session may be held, not will be held, may be held, and there are reasons for it, if approved by 2/3. It does not say it's mandatory. It gives the criteria by which it can be raised as a request to go into closed session, exactly as you made the comment there, Councilmember Kurtzwell. So it's written that way, and it matches exactly what's in the Open Meetings Act handbook.
Councilmember Kivel?
That's actually never been in dispute. I mean, we've always functioned like that, and there are plenty of things, certainly the idea of litigation, having the decision makers being abreast of what the latest information is, seems just at face value to be understood. So it's irresponsible to not take advantage of it when you're in litigation like that.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Point of order, personal attack. Just because somebody has a different opinion than you doesn't mean they're wrong. It doesn't mean that they don't have a valid point. So with respect to the closed session, additionally, I was reading the case that came out of Lyon Township with the Open Meetings Act violations over there. And it's very clear that even if you want to go into a closed meeting and discuss an attorney letter, you can only discuss the import of that letter. You cannot talk about anything else that may be related to the letter or tangential to the letter. You are only permitted to talk about what was in that letter. So if you say, I want to go in and I want to talk about the attorney's letter dated blah, 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 and it talks about point A, B, and C, you cannot use that closed meeting to carry on a conversation about D, E, and F that may be related, but if it's not in that letter, you cannot talk about it.
Mr. Mayor?
It's pretty strict.
Councilmember Dill?
Maybe we should just add that line. Maybe that would just clear it up and just say only for discussion are the item that we went into closed meetings for. If we just say that, then.
That's the law, there's no.
That's the law.
It is, but I'm just saying.
That's the law.
If it's going to be a point of contention, we might as well just throw it in there and move along.
We just need to stick to that too when we go into
Yeah.
those meetings.
I assume, do you go in there also, Lisa?
Yes.
So I would assume that you would help us with that.
And there may be other items that are not necessarily included within a closed session or calling that are included within this item or any of the other items, because I certainly was not going to include everything with the 638 pages of the Roberts Rules of Order.
Right.
I'm just trying to establish the procedures. The main focus of me putting and ensuring that this item was in there was because last year I did bring an item before council, and you council can decide, yes, may, it's not shall, but it's may go into closed session to discuss these, and you make that determination. At some point in time, I believe council should trust their manager when if they're going to be bringing something before you, and I want to update you or I want to discuss with you regarding your case or discuss regarding what your opinion on is something moving forward, that we have that ability to do that. If you do not want to afford me the opportunity to express some of these things that may be taking place within a lawsuit, You just have to understand that, remember, when this is settled and you wondered how the whole thing happened, it's because you did not want to go into closed session, and I made the determination on my own, working with the attorney, and this is how we were going to settle it. So just remember, when something like that does occur, that's not any way a threat. It's just trying to explain to you the reason is behind this is because there's something that I think you need to know about, and I want to update you on, or I want to get your opinion on. And that could be just one item. It could be the purchase of property. And to just say, no, we're not going to do it, I don't necessarily feel is the right decision. You could get into that meeting and say, no, this is not enough. Okay, then you move out. But there's certain things we do not want to discuss within the public. And this item that we had last year, we did not want to talk about it in the public because it was a lawsuit.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you. I would just like to clarify a little bit. The reason I voted no, not to go into the closed meeting, was because the discussion was not ripe for a closed meeting. You wanted to go into a closed meeting to talk about litigation. That is not what the Open Meetings Act says. The Open Meetings Act says to talk about litigation strategy. We had a case where the attorney hadn't even been through the judge yet. The attorney didn't know what the trial strategy was, just kind of wanted, I can tell you, I can see that letter in front of me right now. What the attorney basically said, wanted to get you familiar with the case. That's not what an open meeting, a closed meeting is for.
Mr. Mayor.
The case was not ripe for the litigation. It wasn't that I was opposed to going into a closed meeting. It was the facts weren't developed sufficiently to go into a closed meeting. That was the issue. It wasn't that I was opposed at all.
Councilmember Dill.
I appreciate both your points. I feel like it's really off topic.
Right on topic.
Well, I mean, I think that that's a specific instance where we're talking about a rule. So I think that we should talk about what the rule is and not rehash that situation that happened last year.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
But that's how you understand your rule. You take a rule and you apply facts to it. So you don't understand the rule until you start applying facts. And so some clarification needed to be made because you did have a fact pattern. And you did have a case where you had a closed session. And you had people that did not voted no on that closed session.
Correct. And that's why we say that people have to vote on it. So that's the whole rule.
Yeah.
That you can vote.
Do we have any further discussion? Okay. Paul, did you want to jump to the ones where we had notes about, or did you want to read all of them so the public had a record of it as well?
Well, the next one, study session, there really wasn't any comments, and that's just upon the call of the mayor. Council can appropriate notice to council members, to the public. Council may convene a work session devoted exclusively to the exchange of information relating to municipal affairs. No vote shall be taken on any matters under discussion, nor shall any council member enter into a formal commitment with another member regarding a vote to be taken subsequently. The next one, under agenda preparation and distribution, there were 3 comments under, but they're 2 short paragraphs, so if you don't mind, I'll read both of those. The city manager and city clerk, with consultation and concurrence of the mayor, shall prepare an agenda of business to be considered at each regular council meeting. Items of business must generally be submitted by 12 noon on the Wednesday regarding the next regular meeting, subject to the discretion of the city manager. Agenda materials will primarily be provided to city council by electronic delivery method. Paper copies of agenda materials will be provided only where the materials are likely to be retained by regular review. Bound documentation such as master plan for use, or the budget, or where a paper copy is required or appropriate to completely convey the information of the materials. This item was added. There was discussion last year regarding computers. Majority of councils that I deal with or have dealt with even in the past 12 to 15 years now are using electronic means, and it was a means to try to convey, to try to save paper, to expedite items. Council members could have numerous documents, numerous meetings in front of them, and that's why this item's in here, and that's why it's up for discussion, whether you decide to move forward with paper or not.
Lisa, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to note that a lot of these comments were pretty much, they're all similar in that they don't want just electronic mail. So my suggestion on this one would just be another or for when paper copies are delivered, and that is at the request of a council member.
Councilmember Kibble, go ahead.
Well, there is the other concern of the devices. I mean, I'm not going to use my own hardware for doing city business, so have you got a line on purchasing hardware?
Can I address?
Yeah, and actually, I discussed it at a prior meeting regarding dollar amounts. And in another community which I work, they gave us, or it gave stipends to council members to be able to use towards them. It's just for discussion purposes, because I want council to think about this. We are in the 21st century. We should be looking at electronic means. This is extremely important in the efficient operation of how things are done in front of you, in the future, preparation of packets, labor, material, paper, all those sort of things. There are very few communities, very few that are giving out 2 or 3 inch documents or whatever. And now we started to save paper by printing things on both sides, which wasn't done before. But if you don't want to do that, just understand, obviously there are costs that are associated
Well, we very infrequently have the 2 or 3 inch packet. The idea of not having some understanding of when this is likely to transition is kind of important to when you're making the rules. So,
Councilmember Dill.
I did a little research on this. I got a beautiful mind on here but I went through this and I got a little bit of an average on how much paper we go through, just for people's comments on not wanting to buy computers because of how much money they cost. Went through and gave a very conservative estimate, 750 pieces of paper in one meeting. How much that was, it ends up being 18,000 pieces of paper a year. That's 36 reams at $10. It's 360 days. You don't need to know all this. But printing, I went through and figured out the average printing costs and how much it is, and with it being two-sided, blah, blah, blah. It comes out to about $2,160. And an iPad, a basic iPad, is $350. In 1 year, we could pay for 6 iPads. By the next year, we could pay for the 7th. iPads usually last about 4 to 5 years. We could be saving between $6,000 and $8,000 if we did it this way.
Councilmember Kennedy.
And the discussion we had previously is the iPad may not be the most appropriate
Right.
electronic means for this application. It may be a Surface Pro, it may be a regular laptop. What I didn't hear in there is the additional cost that's involved with somebody, monitoring the printer, collating it, and sending the police
Right.
officer out, plus the gas, wear and tear on the vehicle to deliver 7 packages,
I
et
actually
cetera.
wrote that on here,
Have that
not
on?
to mention that.
Okay, so again, I like the electronic, I'm not convinced it's the iPad is the solution for it personally.
This was just a little estimation of how much money we could save and how much, that it definitely would save money, not to mention the environmental impact of all this paper.
Councilmember Walton.
Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree with you with the environmental impact. I brought this up a year and a half ago. The mayor and I went several months without receiving a packet. I think I held out a little bit longer than he did. It's extremely confusing to sit here and try to look at something on electronic or try to follow if you don't have it in front of you. I will say that. I will say that I'm not going to print this at my own cost. Printing would be better at a mass quantity printer. It is not set up, these are not set up for personal printers. So you're gonna save more money doing it on their commercial printer. However, I agree, I would like to see that we save money, put it on something electronically. Now you're talking, are we going to email it to that person so that person is responsible for having internet? Or is that person, there's many questions that come up to me. If we have something that has a flash drive, do we turn in our flash drives at the end of every meeting? They put it on a flash drive, give it back to us. That's still got to be delivered. So there are questions here that come up. There are many ways to resolve this.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Kennedy.
Again, as a starting point, our attorney has, I think covered both bases there. It's at the request of the council member, whether it's paper, you can still get paper, they would print it here, or you can get the electronic, we'll cross that bridge, and the most appropriate way to do it. Both venues are offered up, it's just, here's how we would need to move forward.
Any further discussion?
One other thing, Mayor, is just, I would be remiss if I didn't include this within the items because this was standard with most of the other procedures.
And it is budgeting season, so it'd be a good time to think about it.
Next item, as part of that same section of agenda preparation and distribution, was no items added to the published agenda unless approved by the majority vote of council. The agenda of regular meetings of the city council shall be prepared in accordance with the following format. It listed how we at the city handle our agendas and what's normally included. Again, this is standard for people, new members coming on council, anybody that wants to review council's procedures, they totally understand what's on regular agenda and how things usually appear.
If no one has anything, we'll move on to the next one.
Posting requirements for regular meeting. This was standard for regular meetings of council. The clerk shall post at City Hall within 10 days after the first meeting of the council in each calendar year. A public notice stating the dates, times, and places of its regular meeting for the year. There was one comment about the 10-day posting is necessary. And if you want to comment on that.
It's specifically required under the Open Meetings Act. It's 15.265, paragraph 2.
Okay, explain that, please. Can you explain that a little more, Lisa, please?
Yes, every year, when you approve your meetings for the year, you have to post that within 10 days, once a year.
At the start of the calendar year?
Yes.
Has that always been the law? I've never,
As long as I've been a municipal attorney, and I'm going on 20 years, so
okay, I've never.
you probably don't know because it's just something that happens administratively once a year. So you probably never.
Okay, fine.
The Open Meetings Act.
Any further discussion? Okay, Paul?
The next part of that same posting requirements for scheduled regular special meeting of the council, the public notice state that the date and time and place of the meeting shall be posted at least 18 hours before the meeting. In addition to posting at City Hall, the notice should be posted on the city website. The website posting shall be included on the home page or separate pages. It's dedicated to notices for special meetings and is accessible by a prominent or conspicuous link on the home page. However, such an 18-hour notice as described above is not required for a meeting of the council, an emergency meeting in the event of a widespread natural disaster, severe or imminent threat to health, safety, welfare of the public when 2/3 of the member of the council determined that delay would be detrimental to city efforts in responding to the threat. The notice shall be published as soon as possible and available at the emergency meeting. Yes, this is covered by the Open Meetings Act, but it was part of the posting requirement, and that's why it's included on this page.
Any further discussion?
Next section, meeting minutes. The clerk shall attend a city council meeting to record all proceedings and resolutions of the council in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. In the absence of the clerk or deputy clerk, the council may appoint one of its own members or another person to temporarily perform the clerk duties. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, within 5 business days of a council meeting, a draft of the minutes shall be prepared by the clerk showing the substance of each separate decision of the council and shall indicate the vote of the council members. The clerk shall prepare the final minutes within 8 business days of the council meeting. That's another procedural item which Lisa just spoke about. You may not be aware of it, but that is one of our requirements.
Question.
Councilmember Richards?
Don't you feel this puts a lot of pressure on our clerk? What if she's shorthanded or ill or has to have a replacement coming in? I don't see how it's possible to expect us to be getting our copies of something within 8 days.
It's a requirement of the law, and that's why it's written in there, and that's why it is. And whether she is able to do it or somebody else, we do in fact have to follow this requirement.
Okay, well, it's new. I don't think we've ever done that. Okay, I pass.
Any further discussion on that?
Next part is the minutes of the regular and special meetings will be kept by the clerk and shall be assigned by the mayor and clerk upon the approval by city council. Separate set of minutes shall be taken by the clerk or the designated secretary at a closed session. These minutes will be retained by the clerk for the period of time required by the Open Meetings Act and shall not be available to the public and shall be disclosed only if required by a court of law. Minutes of closed session meetings may be distributed by council for review at a closed session and may be approved in council's discretion and returned to the clerk. Yes, this is in there. It's a requirement of the Open Meetings Act, But like I said, it's just added as part of the minutes so people do fully understand regarding closed session, because we do get those questions, and unless somebody knows how to look within Robert's Rules of Order, they may say, why can't I have a copy of what happened in closed session? It is listed here.
Any discussion? Okay.
Next section, conduct of meetings, presider of meetings. The mayor shall be responsible for enforcing these rules by procedure and for enforcing orderly conduct at council meetings. At the first meeting of the council following each city election, the council shall appoint one of its members, mayor pro tem, who shall preside in the absence of the mayor. In the absence of both mayor and the mayor pro tem, the member present who has the longest consecutive service on the council shall preside.
Lisa?
If I can just point you to, in one of the questions we received, it was commenting on this is a lot of pressure for the mayor. Unfortunately, that's in your charter. It's section 4.2, subparagraph B, where the mayor is responsible to maintaining order.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Lisa.
The next one is B, general rules of parliamentary procedure. Where these rules of the city charter are silent, Robert Rules of Order, newly revised, shall, to the extent reasonably feasible, govern the proceedings of the council. The city attorney shall act as parliamentarian. In addition, the following general rules of debate shall apply. The maker of the motion is entitled to speak first. A council member must obtain the floor or by being recognized by the mayor. A council member shall confine discussion of the question at hand and to its merits and shall not be interrupted except by a point of order or privilege raised by another member. No council member is entitled to speak at a time on the same motion while any other council members wish to make their first speech. A council member may not speak against his or her own motion but may vote against it. Questions and remarks must be addressed through the mayor, and council members are not to speak directly to each other or to staff member.
Lisa?
Just to summarize, there was a note that number 2 should be number 1 and the reverse. I have no objection to that. We can make that change. Also wanted to just comment briefly. Obviously, if you've looked at Robert's Rules of Order, it's a very small font. I think it's 1,172 pages, if memory serves. There are a lot of rules in there. The purpose of this is just to lay down just the fundamental framework to help you move forward. Obviously, you would refer to Robert's Rules if you needed an answer to a question that's not addressed.
And the follow-up with the seventh item on that was also a courteous tone must be maintained, and interjecting personal notes or attacking another member's motives is prohibited.
I got a question.
Councilmember Richards?
Lisa, please clarify something. On number 6 here, I understand we address our questions to you and manager through the mayor and so on. But when we have a department head standing here giving us a proposal for a new truck or a new piece of equipment, does this mean that we can't ask him a question to state the facts, such as I can recall a time when I asked, do you go with Allison Transmissions, okay? I feel that was a legitimate question when I asked it, and he answered it. But does this mean that we can't ask a legitimate question of a department head when he's making a presentation?
So what this is saying is you can ask the question of the mayor, and the mayor will ask the question of the city official. But right now, you already asked for permission to ask your question. You asked to be recognized, and the mayor recognizes you.
Okay, somebody else feed in on
Well,
that.
just so we're clear, for Councilmember Richards here, as long as he is recognized, he will be able to ask that question, right?
Well, that's not how this is worded,
Okay.
but we can change it.
Well, I think and this is just my opinion. That's, at least as far as I can remember, how we've kind of run it here. And I'd be willing to hear other people's. Councilmember Kittle.
Well, I think it has likely ineffective and inefficient translation by expecting somebody else to, and the follow-ups that would be necessary. If you're trying to have a conversation, you're trying to elicit some information from somebody. So the idea of having back and forth until you've concluded what your information band needs to be. The idea of having the mayor translate what you're looking for seems kind of silly.
Councilmember Kennedy, go ahead.
And I agree. It's no different than what we do right now where
Precisely.
anybody have any questions for Bob regarding downtown? Okay,
Right.
anybody have any questions for Chief Sovic regarding this? I mean, it is the most efficient way to handle it.
Councilmember Walton?
Right, I think that if you actually go to the next page, number 7 should have been included in the grouping and all those questions being put together, but there's a point here that says, why would you not be allowed to ask questions? If you don't ask questions, you cannot get answers. And that's basically what we're all saying here. We want to be able to ask those questions, we want to be able to get educated on our subject matter. So I agree, when you play the telephone game and
Right.
pass the question down, you're going to lose translation there.
Does anyone else have anything to add on that?
Mr. Mayor, I think, yeah, part of that was that just that the discussion reads mark must be addressed through the mayor. So it is you that is addressing and say, council, do you have any questions for that individual? Just so that's just everybody else going free form without going
Right.
through you, or you recognizing that individual to ask that question.
Essentially, everything else that we do is the same way, so.
Okay, moving forward.
Next one, C is,
Oh,
One more.
sorry,
Sorry.
Councilmember Walton, I did not see you.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I would like to see a number 8 added, though, about the sidebar conversation. It looks like it's come up here a few times, and it does happen quite often where one council member is given the floor and other council members are having sidebar discussions, and they're over-talking the person that was given the floor. So I would like to see on number 8 considered there.
so 8, no sidebar discussions during council discussion, is that what you're, is that-
You know, if Maggie's given the floor and I start talking to Carl and you can't hear what Maggie's asking because we're having this conversation.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
I'd like to refer the attorney to page 394 in Robert's Rules. That's where most of these are coming from. These are your basic rules for a meeting. And it's refraining from disturbing the assembly. During debate, during remarks by the presiding officer to the assembly, and during voting, no members should be permitted to disturb the assembly by whispering, walking across the floor, or in any other way. The key words here are disturb the assembly. There have been times when I've listened to videos from meetings and you can hear people talking while other people are talking. And it just goes on through the whole meeting. So it's not a case of just somebody saying, oh, by the way, I didn't see that. These are conversations that continue throughout the meeting. So I would like to also see something in here that reminds council that the respect goes to the person that has the floor and refrain from disturbing the assembly, because it's very, very disturbing. Yes.
Lisa, go ahead.
So it sounds like your comment is similar to Councilmember Walton's comment. So adding a new 8 that addresses that issue would satisfy both of your concerns.
It's a Robert's Rules of Order.
Well, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of Robert's Rules of Order that
Yeah,
aren't in
but
here.
it's a basic, it's a basic courtesy.
No problem.
I would agree. And if we're going to go into that, let's just go ahead and make sure we're not making noise into the microphone deliberately, too. Loud breathing, coughing while people are talking, too. There's a mute button here to help with that.
Just point of clarification, do you want that in the rules, or are you just
Well,
stating that?
It's not limited to conversation. Any sort of distracted noise through the microphone. Any further discussion? All right, thank you, Lisa.
okay, you can stop me whenever you want, so just, I'll continue until he keeps doing
Well,
this right now. Right
I
now, we're
mean-
on C quorum, so
Okay,
you guys decide.
all right.
I don't want to keep
Carl,
interrupting
if you
you.
need to step out, feel free.
C quorum, 3 members of the council shall be a quorum for the transaction of business at all meetings of the council, but in the absence of a quorum, any number of council members may adjourn in any regular or special meeting to a later date. The quorum is in here, obviously, for specific reasons, and we realize that the quorum, as it's written within our charter, is a little bit different, but that was based upon a certain number of members on council, 5, now we're 7. We're reviewing the items that potentially may need to be changed. So I want to make everybody aware of why that's written the way it is.
Councilmember Kennedy?
Okay, and Paul, you're right. you know, section 4.1 of the charter does talk about the fact we have 7 council members. Section 4.5 says 3 are a quorum, yet in section 18 or 13.4, it says the majority of the council members are a quorum. So we have 2 conflicting entries in that charter that need to be aligned.
Councilmember Kurtzwell? Oh, sorry. Councilmember Kivel did make ask for the floor.
Since the 7-member panel has been the making of the council, we've always operated as 4 being the quorum. So my concern about having language like this where we spec out what the charter says as being the authority, are we creating some vulnerability about something that would be unforeseeable, but we end up creating an environment where someone could abuse the idea of that language problem? So to me, quite honestly, I would prefer taking advantage of the language that speaks to the majority being the deriving of the quorum rather than that 3-member that didn't end up getting modified when we went to 7. So
That's in the terms and definitions part of the,
I have it.
okay.
Thank you. It's something we've been working on as well.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Well, I've had this issue now for many years. And clearly, when you look at the charter, chapter 4, you can see in section 4.1 where they changed it, and they now added 7 council persons. But I have to believe that when you flip the next page and it goes to quorum, it's only 2 sections away. Somebody had to have looked and said, 3 members of the council shall be a quorum. So I look at it and say, if they intended the majority to be the quorum, they would have put it in. All they had to do, just look at the charter itself, and you'll see it's just a couple sections away. How could you miss it? I can't believe the incompetency was at that level, they missed it. So then I went to Robert's Rules of Order, because I've always been told, well, Robert's Rules of Order says a majority. Robert's Rules of Order says if a customary practice is, and the customary practice of the council was to do the majority, becomes in conflict with parliamentary authority or any other written rule. It's your written rule that governs. It's your uppermost governing document. The uppermost governing document in the city is the charter, not Robert's Rules, not where you pick a majority, not this. If the charter says 3, it's 3. Robert's Rules tells you if there's a conflict, you go to your most highest governing document.
Lisa, go ahead.
If I may, you are absolutely correct. Your highest governing document is the charter. However, the charter has 2 conflicting provisions. One in the specific area of city council, and then in the general area of definitions is where it says majority. But the reason I feel that was simply an oversight is because the charter says that your decisions are made by a majority of the entire board, regardless of how many people are here. So the 3 quorum requirement, you wouldn't be able to transact any business because there's not for the majority of the entire board. So I think that's why I'm convinced that it was an oversight, as sad as that is. Does that make sense, Meg?
No, and I'll tell you why. Permission?
Yes,
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
No, I don't agree. Just for the sake of academics, just to argue. If that's the case, then there would have been no reason to put quorum in the charter being 3. Because the charter already says a majority makes the decision. So why would you even need to state in a couple of sections later that quorum is 3 members? Shall be quorum for the transaction of business. In the absence of quorum, they even talk about quorum. The number of members less than quorum, they talk about more, may adjourn any regular special meeting to the later date. So if you didn't intend for quorum to control how a decision was made, why would you even put it in the charter? You have a conflict, and it probably should be fixed by a ballot procedure.
Yeah, I mean, my only response to that is the fact that there are two provisions for quorum could explain why they reviewed the definition of quorum and felt it didn't need to be changed and simply overlooked the other description of quorum. It's possible, obviously I don't know, I'm making assumptions as to how that happened. But in any case, the way I read the charter, you could not make any decisions without 4 members, which is a majority of the entire board. So having a quorum of 3 would do nothing for you because you couldn't accomplish any business.
Councilmember Kenny, I know you wanted the floor, but Councilmember Walton hasn't spoke yet, so we're going to go there first. Councilmember Walton.
I actually have just 2 quick questions. One of them actually is to Councilmember Kibble, if I may.
Yes.
When did we go to a 7-member council?
I don't remember what year it was. It was
Ron
around
Morelli.
Doyle's era, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
2004, I heard whispered over there. Thank you.
Well,
And
that's when the
was-
charter was amended
Yeah,
to
that's
change
right.
that.
And that was when that amendment went in for to say the, okay,
Parvin was the
Harvin
attorney at
was
the time.
the city attorney.
perfect.
Parvin
Thank you.
Lee.
That's all I wanted.
Councilmember Kennedy?
No, I think that's a very good point that Councilmember Walton's brought up, because I think the original charter was probably drafted about 50 years ago, 1970s vintage. So it's been amended, and obviously, it sounds like something was overlooked, wasn't proofread properly. I mean, they still refer to all the councilmen in the council, okay, not council persons, council members, councilmen. So things have changed in 50 years. It's an opportunity to set things right.
Any further discussion? Lisa?
Just to be clear then, do you want the rules of procedure to reflect the 4 in anticipation of making the change?
I certainly do.
I do.
Do we want to do just a hand raise
Let's do
thing on that, or what are we thinking there, Councilmember
Can you rephrase it? Can you say that again? I just want to make sure I understood the,
Because there's a conflict in the charter,
right.
clearly it needs to be revised, and Paul and I are in the works and figuring out, where to go with that and how to bring that to you. But in the meantime, the way we drafted these rules, it says 3 is a quorum. But again, as I explained, you wouldn't be able to transact any business at 3 anyway. And since there is conflicting provisions in the charter, I wouldn't be opposed if you prefer to list the 4, even though I think the charter clearly says 3.
Can we
Right.
copy the verbiage from the charter that says the majority, not giving a number, but using the exact verbiage that it has in there?
Yes.
That would, I think, would make more sense. So then we're sticking with our charter rules.
Councilmember Kivel?
Well, the objective ultimately is going to end up being amendments to the charter, because it's an archaic document, so that can be addressed then. So if the language were the majority, then it would be flexible. It would end up operating one way or the other.
That's why I'd like to see that instead of a number.
Any further discussion on quorum? All right, Paul?
Next section is D, voting. A roll call vote shall be required on the ordinances and resolutions, and the yes or no vote shall be entered upon the records opposite the name of the council member. Whenever the vote is unanimous, it shall be necessary to so state. There was a question there regarding should there be a provision for the mayor or other council to request a roll call vote for other matters?
Councilmember Kivel, you,
Yes, actually, the idea of anybody can call a roll call. So, I mean, that doesn't make any sense to not have that ability.
anyone else have anything to add to that?
No.
Okay.
No member of the council shall vote on any question in which he or she has a financial interest other than the common public interest, or on a question concerning his conduct. But on all other questions, every member present shall vote unless excused by unanimous consent of the remaining members present.
Lisa?
Charter Section 4.6 sub C requires unanimous consent of all the members. There was also some question on this issue regarding conflict of interest. I don't know if you want to address that now. But I did take a look at the ethics rule and specifically Section 2-76, I think, addresses Councilmember Kurtzwell's concern.
I have a question.
What is it? What?
The ethics ordinance, Section 2-76. You had articulated a concern about conflicts of interest and not just being financial. And the ethics ordinance talks about all the different ways you have a conflict, not just financial.
Yeah, but it
No, sorry, Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. The issue was excused by unanimous consent. That's the problem. And for council's benefit, and I've already spoken to ethic advisors in the legal profession, is that I sometimes have a conflict of interest with respect to a client. Now, there may be a client that comes up here that I am not paid for and that I am doing it pro bono. I do a lot of free work, so maybe that person comes up here. I still would have a conflict of interest because they're a client. It's not up to council to decide whether or not I have a conflict of interest. So the unanimous consent part of it for me, I was told, if you have a conflict of interest and it's regarding a client, your ethical responsibility is to the client, not to the council. So that unanimous consent is an issue for me.
That's in your charter. And in section 4.6 sub C, it's clear. But to answer your question, that's not uncommon in municipal meetings. So the question then becomes, as a council member Kurtzwell is expressing to you concern regarding a conflict of interest, and somebody on council does not want to give consent, which means she has to vote. So then you have a commissioner now, a council member, who has to make a decision about a potential ethical violation personally or a legal issue for the entire council. And I think that's what these council members have to weigh when deciding on unanimous consent. And then, obviously, what you would have to weigh in deciding on how you handle that particular matter in light of the potential ramifications either way.
Well, I know how I'm going to vote.
I'm just saying, just globally talking about the rules of procedure, I just wanted to address that because I know that that's a concern of yours. There's no way around it unless you amend the charter to say you don't need unanimous consent. We would just have to respect the council members and understanding the position that comes in, because, I mean, think about it, for example, you're sitting here saying, I can't vote on this, I have a conflict of interest. It goes down, right? And then that person is now aggrieved by the fact that city council didn't allow her to abstain. And so now that person might have a claim against city council for allowing or not allowing a council member who's indicated to you that they have a conflict from abstaining. So I think everyone just has to keep that in mind, but as far as the unanimous issue, unless you amend the charter, it's a requirement.
Councilmember Kennedy?
This section reads almost identical in the Wixom City Charter, the Novi City Charter, and the Brighton City Charter, where no member of the council shall vote on any question in which he or his immediate family has a direct financial interest other than the common public interest, or on any question concerning his own conduct, but on all other questions, each member who is present shall vote when his name is called, unless excused by the unanimous consent of the remaining members present. Wixom. No member of the council shall vote on any question in which the member has a financial interest, other than the common public interest, or on any question concerning the member's own conduct. On all other questions, each member who is present shall vote when his or her name is called, unless excused by unanimous consent of the remaining members present. Novi. And no member of the council shall vote on any question in which he has a financial interest other than the common public interest, or on any question concerning his own conduct, but on all other questions, each member who is present shall vote when his name is called, unless excused by unanimous consent of the remaining members present. Brighton. I think we're probably good with what's there in our charter.
Councilmember Richards?
Question to Lisa. Lisa, does this mean that when any member of our council here says, gee whiz, I think I better abstain from this, and Mr. Mayor says, do we have a vote? Do we call for a vote or ask you or what, whatever? How, I haven't given any reasons why I would want to abstain, but maybe it would be necessary and maybe not. Give me some thoughts on this, please.
Lisa?
You would want to, as the individual council member who feels they need to abstain due to a conflict of interest, you should articulate that so that your fellow council members understand what the conflict is. And if in fact it's a conflict under the ordinance, the ethics rules, or state law, then they should be allowed to abstain.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
We ever did it before.
Back when it was back in October, I can't remember if it was September or October, I was at a Lyon Township meeting, and a board member there had a conflict of interest. And it wasn't a financial conflict of interest. She had a conflict of interest because she had a personal, deep opposition to the matter that was coming up. How she handled it was she spoke with, the attorney from your office. She discussed it with the attorney and then brought it before the township. And I think everybody voted to do it. But the point is that there are these conflicts that people have, and I would hope that this council would appreciate that individuals are trying to make good, honest decisions for government, because these conflicts of interest arise in areas of public corruption, basically, in contracts. I mean, that's where you see them. That's where you saw them in Detroit many, many years ago. And so I would hope that if anybody has a very deep feeling or has a conflict because of work or whatever, that they cleanse that decision process so that the person receiving the decision knows that that decision was made by an honest, non-corrupt, and that's why you have these conflicts of interest, is to keep corruption out of the decision-making process. So, but she did excuse herself, and it had nothing to do with anything that the Councilman Kennedy read. She just had a feeling.
Councilmember Kivel?
At the same time, the idea of someone deciding that they don't want to weigh in on a decision that's being brought about by the board because they're concerned that their friendship with their neighbor might end up being compromised is absolutely inappropriate for someone to bail on. So,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Okay.
Paul?
Next page is consent agenda. Consent agenda may be used to allow council members to act on numerous administrative or non-controversial items at one time upon request by the member of council. An item shall be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. In order to limit the number of items removed from the consent agenda, all members of council will contact the manager before the meeting to have questions answered. Unless a member of council specifically requests that an item listed on a consent agenda be removed therefrom and action be taken separately on said item, those items listed on the consent agenda shall be approved, accepted, etc. by motion, unanimous roll call vote of the council. Those items so approved under the heading consent agenda shall appear in the council minutes in the proper form.
Further discussion? Okay.
there, actually, I
Councilmember
do
Kill?
have one question. The comment here, items can be removed by anybody. I'm not quite tracking the origin of that. Was that supposed to be anybody in the audience?
I'm not sure what that was. I can look at the responses, but it is just by the governing body can remove them.
Yeah.
It's not anybody else can remove them.
I wasn't quite tracking
Request
where
them to
that-
removed.
Where that
I
came
guess
from.
if something is not complete, perhaps it may be removed in advance of the meeting, but only technically city council members, if you have the agenda set, you're allowed to remove those items.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Reconsider, rescind, or repeal a question. When question has been decided, in order for it to be reconsidered, the council member who voted on this prevailing side of the question may move for a reconsideration at the same time or next regular meeting, provided no action has taken place as a result of the previous vote. If a matter is to be brought up for reconsideration at a succeeding meeting, the council member making the request must notify the city manager in writing by the Wednesday prior to the meeting, who shall place this matter of reconsideration on the matter on the agenda. A motion to rescind or repeal some previous action may be made at any time at a regular or special meeting of the council, provided such matter has been formally placed on the agenda for consideration and it is in order. And yes, it is within Robert's rules.
Any further discussion?
Next one is G, use of communication devices during meetings. A council member shall refrain from the use of electronic or wireless communication devices during meetings to communicate with other council members or with members of the public, regardless of whether the device is provided by the city. This prohibition shall not apply to communication with family members, employees, or co-workers other than whom the member communicates on a matter unrelated to an agenda item for council action. Such communication shall be infrequent and shall not disrupt, disturb, otherwise adversely affect the conduct of the meeting.
Any further discussion on that? Paul?
Next one is council comments. All regular council meeting agendas shall provide for reserved time for council member comments. Remarks shall be limited to those pertaining to city business or policy, issue of community concern or interest. Each member shall be limited his or her comments to 3 minutes.
I'll kick this one off.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I feel like we should get the same amount of time as the public gets to speak. So if they get 2 and 2, we should get 4. And if you can't get what you need to say out in 4 minutes, then it should probably be on the agenda anyways. That's my thoughts on it. Councilmember Kivel?
Well, I'm comfortable with the 3 minutes, and I think if you have a grander thought, the idea of asking for an extension, if what you're saying, you're clearly getting close to wrapping things up, but you have one final thought. I don't think that's asking so much.
I'll say something.
Councilmember Richards?
I think we all, depending on what we want to get across to the rest of the council and the public, okay? If we want to ask for 2 minutes extension on our 3 minutes, I don't see why it would be a major problem, okay? Because we can always shorten it up the next time around. I think asking for an extension is advisable and okay, but absolutely limit it to 3 minutes seems a little bit restrictive.
Councilmember Kennedy?
I thought the mayor just suggested 4, Colonel.
Okay, 4, okay, sure, all right, yeah, 4. Well, as long as we're courteous with each other, and we have a list of things we want to bring to the public's attention. Go ahead, Steve.
This puts the burden on the people speaking to have their thoughts organized and present them in a clear and concise manner. I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation for the people sitting up here.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Councilmember.
At the same time, people that are coming here, if they're, well, this is council comments that we're speaking to, so that's a whole different animal. I mean, when the public's speaking, you don't expect them to have concise arguments to make, so, yeah.
Okay, so do we want to do we want to stick with the 3 and ask for an extension, or do we want to put it in as 4 and then we can also leave the ask for extension in there? Just looking for some clarity.
I agree, it seems plenty, quite.
Say something.
Oh, Councilmember Walton?
I don't think I've ever timed any of my council comments, to be quite honest, to know how long I'm speaking. But I think I'm very happy with 3 or 4, but I do want to see the verbiage in there that they can ask for an extension.
Okay. Well, then I'm fine with going for 3 as long as it's open for an extension. And now, how would we handle that? A simple majority vote?
Let the mayor make it.
For the extension?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Or should the mayor just grant
I
it?
think the.
Yeah, let the
And that's,
mayor.
I have fine either way, I'm just asking. Councilmember Kennedy.
I think it's incumbent upon the mayor, he should be able to grant it. He also, by the same token, should monitor the behavior to see if it's a repetitive requesting for an extension, meeting after meeting after meeting. Okay.
At the
If somebody
same-
abuses the procedure, then there's an issue.
At the same time, if people are saying the same thing over and over again, obviously you should be able to pull the plug, so.
Paul?
Next item is audience participation. There's a lot of items that regarding audience participation. I'm not sure if you're going to read all those. The one, there was a question regarding, it has to do with regular special council meetings, and it says, "No speaker shall continue to address the council after being advised by the chair that the speaker's time for addressing council has expired."
So I'll talk about the comment, because I can only remember one time allowing someone to go unyielded at 2 minutes, and it was our friends from the Historical Society and Commission discussing things about Cool Yule, and there being some communication issues over there. I usually tend to allow people to wrap things up right at 2 minutes, so I think the 2 minutes has been working well. It's not like we need to guillotine people at 2:01, right? So that's my thoughts on that.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think also in allowing the mayor to sort of gauge this, because you're in City Hall, I mean, you work, but so do I, and I'm not around as much as you are. So you have probably more understanding of why somebody's coming to the microphone, because you probably have meetings with the city manager, and so you have a little bit more understanding of why this person is here and speaking the way it is. You know, personally, that's your call. If you know there's something going on in the city and you want to give this individual additional time, that's fine, because I'm not always going to be in the loop. Probably half of us aren't in the loop. And I think that's your call. You decide.
Well, I would say that I usually remind people to just finish up their idea, unless it's something along the lines of our volunteers or like that, and I don't plan on making a habit out of it. So, does anyone else have any feedback on that? Okay.
The next item was, there should be no audience comment by voice, clapping, or otherwise showing approval or disapproval of any remarks of the speaker or council.
I'll go ahead and kick that one off too. I did not make a comment back to that. I'm just speaking from my initial reaction to that is that's a tough one to lock down. I mean, if it's like numerous times, I think one time, like, hey, can we keep it down out there? I don't think we're going to escort anyone out for getting excited about something, but I think, and I believe we have kind of some orders on how this happens. A warning would be given. If a second warning has to be given, you can assure yourself that you're a warning away from getting escorted out. Excuse me. She's hilarious, folks. Councilmember Kivel.
If there's reactions of support, it seems kind of silly to end up weighing in on that. But if people are being abusive, kind of, deriding somebody that might have an opinion that they don't feel is appropriate, I would like us to discourage the idea of people not allowing people to say their 2 cents worth. So,
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
I'd like to strike number 7. I think, once again, the mayor has demonstrated he can control a meeting, and if people are sitting here, and for example, tonight, so are you saying that we should not have clapped for these fine police officers that were here tonight getting the awards? Okay, that was audience comment by voice, clapping, or otherwise showing approval or disapproval of any of the remarks of the speaker. The speaker tonight were several police officers. I think you let the mayor control the meeting, get rid of number 7. I think it doesn't create a real good feeling between an open meeting and allowing people to come and express. If you have somebody that is sitting here in a peanut gallery bothering you, the mayor clearly can say, excuse me, you're disturbing my meeting. And you have a sergeant of arms, and you can say, I'm going to give you one more warning, and you can have that person removed. You have the chief here to do that. But I would take out number 7.
Councilmember Kennedy?
Yeah, I think we can probably do that because it's probably covered in section J on the next page where it talks about disorderly conduct.
Councilmember Dill, did you have anything?
That was my exact point.
Okay.
That's fine with me.
Okay. Lisa?
I just want to clarify, after these were drafted, saved in some obscure file heading, I did find a resolution that council approved, or I believe approved, regarding audience participation. It was a multi-page document. I just sent it to Paul a couple hours before the meeting, so I'm sure he hasn't had a chance to look at it. And if in fact council approved a resolution of audience participation, a resolution is really law. And so we would then just incorporate it in here, either by reference or just modifying this to be consistent with what you've approved, if in fact you have approved it.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa. Paul?
The next item was 12 under that, as council members of the mayor shall not respond to general audience comment. The mayor or council members can bring a point of order regarding false information, request a response be provided. The mayor may direct the city manager to respond to the speaker if appropriate during or outside of the meeting. The mayor may also respond with an indication of the appropriate action to be taken.
Anyone got anything on that? Okay.
Next item is under the same discussion of public hearings. Persons under council at a public hearing shall state their name and address. Each person shall be allowed 5 minutes to address the council. There shall be no questioning by the audience of person addressing the council. However, the council members may question person addressing the council, and no person shall be allowed to address council more than once.
Councilmember Kibble.
Actually, the more than once thing causes me a little bit of concern. The public has very little opportunity to weigh in on things that are likely to end up being business that we conduct. So when they do have the opportunity, if someone had weighed in and subsequent speakers had elicited something that they hadn't thought of, the idea of precluding them from being able to expound on whatever somebody else had brought up, I don't have a problem, quite honestly, with giving them the ability to weigh in again.
Could
Councilmember
we maybe make it something like, no one be allowed to address the council more than once, before everybody else has had a chance, I can't think of the right way to say it. So they can't speak twice before everybody else has had a chance to speak once. That's what I'm trying to say.
That seems reasonable.
That's the mayor's option.
Lisa?
If I can just from my experience, when there's a contentious matter, if you don't limit it, you're going to have people coming up, somebody making a comment, somebody then coming up to counter that comment, and it can go on all night long.
That's true, too, yeah.
And
right.
it's hard unless you limit it. And then if you don't limit it, but you allow one person, this is an interesting topic, okay, we're going to let you. Well, now you're treating people differently because you're allowing one person to come up again and not another. So it's really a slippery slope here, which is why we put it in here for one.
Yeah.
Understanding also that you guys allow, you have 2 public comments, so they will have another opportunity.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Yeah, I'm going to fall back on the mayor. Once again, I think, the mayor's here, he or she can judge the crowd, and if somebody's coming up here and you have somebody constantly repeating and playing that game, all the mayor has to say, excuse me, you've had 2 opportunities, you haven't added anything to the debate. I'm going to ask that you please sit down and let somebody else, let the mayor control the meeting. I'm just not, I'm not into micromanaging. I haven't seen where it's been a problem. I've been going to a lot of city council meetings, but I say let the mayor control the meeting.
I'll say something.
Councilman Richards?
If someone comes up here to the podium and it's their purpose and intent, the mayor senses that, okay, is to become a devil's advocate, let's say, to dispute something, okay, that isn't really a big deal enough to make a dispute, but he or she brings up a point, okay, and they don't want to let go, okay. I think the mayor's discretion should override everything, okay, and be able to control this meeting, okay, because you are got people that are like that, okay, from time to time, okay. They don't have their topic well thought through, or they have mental problems, simple as that. And he can make that determination. That's all.
Does anyone else have anything to add? Councilmember Walton?
And maybe you guys already said this, but number 2 says each person shall be allowed 5 minutes to address the council.
So I thought, I just am now seeing that too. We would stick with the 2 and the 2, right?
Well, this is a public hearing. This
Oh,
is
okay.
different
I'm
than
sorry.
public comment. But it's up to you if you don't want to do 5, but generally, if it's a public hearing,
Right,
it's,
no, that's my confusion. Yeah, that's 5.
I'm a little confused on it too, so I
No.
just want to make sure.
Yeah, no,
We're keeping it at 5?
I mean, if they only get to speak once, I think that's fair. So, that's my opinion. We can all, Councilmember Kivel?
Well, that does actually weigh into the multiple times of attending the mic, you know, I mean, you got that kind of time, you should be able to get everything off your chest.
Right.
So,
Well, in a public hearing, forgive me because I've never been to a public hearing or been involved in one. If we're going to give the public 5 minutes, is council still limited to their 3 minutes? So they get longer to talk than we do?
well, your
your
comments, are, I guess just so I understand the question, your comments in the public hearing are just like any debate you would have as an item on the agenda?
So if we're in a public hearing, and each person from the audience comes up and speaks for 5 minutes, does council get a council comment section, just like they would at a regular council meeting?
So the public hearing is conducted within a regular city council meeting.
Okay.
There's just an agenda item that says public hearings. For example, a special
Gotcha.
assessment district or zoning issues have
Getting
public.
confused. I'm a little tired. I've been up
No,
since
no.
5 a.m.
No, well, it is confusing because it's the way I listed it here. So we'll clarify it in listing it as J, and we'll renumber accordingly as one of the comments requested. But yeah, so the public hearing is really an agenda item where you open it up to the public, and it's usually if people affected by whatever you're deciding, personally affected, that would come up and comment. And so they get 5 minutes to essentially present their case to you as why you shouldn't approve the special assessment or whatever the public hearing is
Gremlins.
for.
Right, gotcha.
So you still have your regular comments that are at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Councilmember Kivel, go ahead.
well, to say nothing of the fact, I mean, with the public hearing, we're going to be speaking to the issue itself.
Right.
So we'll have our regular discussion time. There is no time limit on that back and
Right.
forth, so, yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to add to that? Okay, thank you, Councilmember Walton, for actually pointing that out to clarify all that. At this point in time, we are closing in on 10 o'clock. Do we want to entertain a motion to table the remaining schedule? I can certainly sympathize with Councilmember Walton, and getting through the rest of this at either, say, the next council meeting.
Yeah. I'll make a motion.
Councilmember Kurtzwell, sorry, she made a,
Oh, you did. Oh.
I move to postpone the remainder of the discussion on the proposed council rules of procedure until the next scheduled city council meeting in February.
I support.
Any further discussion? Okay. Great job, everyone, tonight on that. So the stopping point will be J, disorderly conduct? Okay. Oh, yeah, sorry. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. All right. Let's see here. At this time, we will move on to the budget. Councilmember Kurtzwell.
I just wanted to ask the city manager, I just saw a report from the state of Michigan on the budget where money is now being appropriated under Public Act 51, the 51 monies. And I saw the amount that may be coming to the city of South Lyon. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
I have not gotten a report from the state on that yet.
Okay. It's a fairly large amount of money, so.
Is it an additional appropriation or?
Well, I was going to call the gentleman tomorrow on it and just get a little bit of some feedback on it, but that's why I was asking. I thought maybe you might know about that. So it was just on the Public Act 51 monies that are now being appropriated by the state. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else with anything on the budget this evening? Okay, we'll move on to the manager's report.
First of all, I have no idea why that went up.
I know,
Anything in our hands,
I'm pretty
so
sure the controls for that are over there, so.
no idea. A couple items. DDA Economic Development Director, as Bob had mentioned this evening, that he is retiring. We do have that posted through the Michigan Municipal League, the Michigan Downtown Association, as well as a couple other means. We have resumes that are due by Friday, February 14th, and I'll keep you posted on that process. Upcoming council agenda, we are going to discuss at the next meeting the commercial rehabilitation tax abatement policy. Still moving on the budget, have meetings with Cultural Arts Parks Commission, also have them coming up with the Cable Commission and the Historical Society. Next week, meeting with our treasurer and finance administrator. We have a meeting with the county treasurer's office and discuss the Oakland County local government investment pool. Also, we'll be discussing with them regarding meeting with the county treasurer. I suggest that council that we have a pre-budget meeting prior to our budget to discuss our pension liabilities and post-employment benefits to show how we are addressing our liabilities. I think it's important that everybody is on the same page and fully understands through MERS and the other reports that we have received, so where we are in relationship to funding those pension as well as other post-employment OPEB benefits. So I would suggest that we perhaps have this meeting in early March as a work session, and I would look at, you can think about this, but perhaps maybe the first Monday in March, that we would just have a meeting, a council work session to discuss those liabilities. We did have a preliminary meeting with our auditors last week to discuss our water and sewer rate analysis, and we'll be bringing that back before council at a future meeting once we get them some additional information. And I wanted to give a shout out to the DPW crews that did an excellent job cleaning the streets as part of, during our snow emergency just over a week ago, ensured that all roads were open to traffic and safe for drivers. And tonight, through the efforts of the police department and examples of the employees here and their commitment to the dedication to our community, I thought that was a good addition to tonight's meeting and a good personal note on what actually goes on here through the city and with its employees. And obviously, we're probably the safest place in Oakland County again tonight at the beginning of this meeting. So that's all I have.
Does anyone have anything for Paul tonight? All right, we'll open the floor for public comment. Please state your name and address.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's a long night, but my name's Ed Roney. I'm a resident of Novi, and I'm also a candidate for the 38th District State Representative. I'm just here tonight just to learn what's going on in South Lyon. I don't know if the clerk needs my address, but I can provide that if needed. But I'm glad to be here. You'll probably see me a few more times in the coming months, and just want to say hello.
Thank you,
very
Mr.
much,
Rooney.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for sticking it out.
Yeah.
All right, at this time, we'll close public comment and move on to council comments. Councilmember Kennedy, why don't you start us off tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, I want to remind everyone about the major sewer project that's going to start next week. According to the Oakland County Water Resource Commission, 8 Mile Road will be closed between Chubb and Napier Roads beginning Monday, February 3rd. At this time, it's estimated that it will be closed for 3 weeks until Monday, February 24th. If all goes according to plan, the intersection of 8 Mile Road and Napier Road is expected to be opened before 8 Mile Road is closed. The recommended detour for through traffic is Beck Road to 10 Mile to Griswold and then back to 8 and vice versa. This section of 8 Mile Road carries approximately 8,140 vehicles daily. So plan ahead and pick an alternate route for the next few weeks so you can avoid the area and any inconvenience. And just know in advance that those 8,000 cars are going to be on those same roads with you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
It's a great reminder. Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy. Councilmember Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a real short group of comments tonight. First up, I want to make a note to the community, and there's only 4 people here. We missed making note of a person who passed away, Mrs. Evelyn Phillips, in our community on the 5th of this month, okay? And she's been a very noteworthy person in the life of our community. She was the leader of the oldest family-owned business here in this town for many years after the untimely passing of her husband Richard in the 1980s. She could easily have left here, but she chose to stay here and maintain and enlarge the family-owned funeral home business. She maintained the provenance of the property and purchased other nearby properties in the downtown area and complemented the appearance and operation of the business with rock work and paving on the eastern side of her property. She had a definite eye for distinctive landscaping and practical use of facilities. It was her presence of mind and good judgment that stabilized and maintained the business throughout many difficult times through 4 decades here in South Lyon. She was a leader in the concept of capital improvement before we ever came up with CI, I think, and was a member of the Methodist Church for 52 years. And I think I'll close with that on that one point. Now, next thing I just want to mention quick, the ice rink was opened up during the cold spell, and it was quite a success. Kids and adults both use it, and hopefully later on this winter when it gets cold again, they'll be back down there on Warren Street, just south of City Hall here, going at it again. Okay, number 3 item here, and the last item. I stopped by 135 Lake Street, East Lake Street. As you all know, that's the old RCA building, used to be owned by a man named Lyon Bonner. And the second contractor is working on the inside of the building. And they wouldn't let me in there, but they will talk to me, and they're very good guys. I asked him, "Have you making pictures of this?" I couldn't get anybody from historical to come and do it, and I couldn't do it. And he said, "We've taken pictures of this operation from start to finish, okay, all the way through. And the owner has demanded that we save the beams and the floor joists for the wood that we're taking out, which he plans to incorporate into furniture that he plans to put in the business. The RCA sign that has been on the outside of the building for years is to be preserved, repaired, and put inside the building as a historical decoration. That's the plan at this time, okay? And they also plan to leave the painting of the dogs listening to the phonograph on the window, They've taken extensive pictures at every phase of this project. Oh, and you guys don't know this, but there's cisterns and in the front and in the back of the building. I never saw them before. Plus, there was a shaft for an elevator. And in the front of the building, there were capstones, circular, which were placed down there. One of the previous tenants mentioned to me he thought there was a second basement or a chamber underneath the basement of that building. So I asked about that when I talked to the contractor today. And he said there was no second chamber of any kind, and the capstones were there, but he thought they were possibly put in there for a dead man drain, which was common 100 years ago, okay, by whoever was occupying the building at the time, before it was all covered with a cement floor. Anyway, the work is progressing, and this owner, I haven't talked to him there only one time, but he's certainly going the extra mile, people, on his rehabilitation, considering what Bob said earlier, that every other contractor that looked at that building would have knocked it down. And he's going to the extra trouble to preserve it and make it bigger, and we wish him the best of luck. Anyway, I thought you'd appreciate a little update on the progress at 135 East Lake Street, because it's a significant piece of property. Cornerstone and the Historical Society is quite interested in it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Richards. Councilmember Walton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple of quick things tonight. One thing that came up to me recently from when I was walking through town, and I should have recognized this and put it on my council request for the upcoming budget year. But when you're crossing the crosswalk at Pontiac Trail and Reynolds Suite Parkway, if you're on the side for Huntington Bank, their parking lot, the crosswalk crosses over toward McCaddy, and you have continued sidewalk into the rail trail. If you cross on the side that is the laundromat side, sorry, I'm directionally challenged, so I'm just going to use landmarks, so I'll put that out there. If you cross on the laundromat side, it goes into the slope, and it's very muddy, it's very dirty. If you don't know that, if you're not from around here or you're new in town and you cross that street, you're stuck in the street. So I'd like to see the city consider putting in some stairwell or some type of sidewalk and with steps that bring you down to the sidewalk safely. I've had several people, I've had a lady cross in a scooter who was then stuck in the street and had to, get down to the entrance of the other sidewalk before the light changed. So it becomes a little dangerous situation there if you're not aware of what's going on and you're not from around here. So I'd like that looked at, please. The other thing I want to say is to Bob and to thank him with the Veterans Rock in the names. I know he's been putting a lot of hard work into working with the original seller of the names for the path stones. And he's also having all the path stones done rubbing so we can make sure we have all the names correct and getting those dyed. So good job. I've heard it from several people how happy they are with Bob and what he's doing for the Veterans Rock. And the last thing I want to say is just something I witnessed over the weekend that was just so cool was I saw an eagle flying over McCaddy Park. And it had straw on its tail ends, and I watched it touch down, but I didn't see where it went. But I just love it. I love that our little town is so cool. We got eagles moving in, so and right into our park. So that's all I have. Have a good night.
Thanks, Councilmember Walton. Councilmember Dild?
Couple quick things. I had the opportunity to attend the MLK Day. I got to see a speaker, Gertrude Kroom, talk about civil rights movement and how the children faced jail and consequences in the early 60s. It was a really awesome program. I really wish more people had been there. It was inspiring, interesting, informative. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the library bringing these kind of quality programs to our city. And I wish more people would take advantage of that because they really do a great job with it. Speaking of the library, I just posted on my page the other day this Gallup poll, a recent article on the Gallup poll that said that libraries are the number one leisure activity, and that includes the movies. So people are visiting 10.5 times a year to the library, which is higher, almost double than the movies, which I thought was interesting. And I just wanted to point out that when people are talking about increasing funding for the libraries and people say nobody goes to the library anymore, that is just not true. And especially our library, we have a lot of stuff. We have a lot of stuff going on there. And then the last thing is the South Lyon Education Foundation is having Fashion for a Passion. They are hosting a fashion fundraiser, and Coral Sash is going to be supplying the clothes. You can buy your tickets there, and the actual event will be at Lyon Oaks Golf Course on March 7th. So they just wanted me to remind people, anybody watching, to please support that. And it obviously going to the South Lyon Educational Foundation is where the money goes. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Dill. Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Thank you. You know, I was all over Livingston County today. I was up in the courthouse all over with a lot of people, and everybody, you heard everybody say how sad, and you knew what they were talking about. If I'm given a ticket to a football game, pro or a basketball game, I would take the basketball ticket in a heartbeat. I remember going to a lot of Piston games, and unfortunately, I never, ever, ever got to see Kobe Bryant play basketball, although I know people that did, and I know people that met him. He was an absolutely incredible individual. I like sports. I followed his career, both not only when he was playing for the Lakers, but followed his career as he was making that transition into Hollywood. I just really, really liked Kobe Bryant. And so his passing on Sunday, was a time for reflection. And so I would only ask that people take the next couple of weeks. There's going to be lots of tributes to Kobe Bryant, and learn something about this incredible young man, of what he did in the LA area. He was very wealthy. He could have done a lot of things. But what he did do was he contributed a lot to charity. He gave a lot to the sport. He gave a lot to a lot of NBA players. He gave a lot to everybody. And learn something from his life, integrate it into your own. And in the end, we'll all be a better society, I think, if we just take little pieces of Kobe Bryant with us along our way on our journey in life. Good night, and thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kurtzwell. Councilmember Kibble.
Okay, first off, the event yesterday at the library, the Art Wall Artist Reception, it was spoken to a little bit earlier. That was really nice to see, though, to appreciate the people that come in and kind of doll up the place make it a little bit more interesting, and see some local talent. There was some discussion, too, about the, I forgot what it's called, the hashtag Dig South Lyon thing, for the digitizing 4,000 pages worth of heralds, and trying to determine whether or not we are in contention, but they still, apparently, the voting thing, the postcards are rated differently than what the tweets are, so they're trying to collate all those numbers, and so we still are holding out hope that we might see 4,000 pages of Herald digitized for us. The message of volunteers. So we always have openings. People should make themselves, if you have an interest in trying to support your community, please step up. Lisa will be happy to take an application for the boards or commissions that need some assistance, have open seats. And kind of on the same thing with Kobe, Jim Lehrer from PBS NewsHour had passed over the weekend. And that was quite a loss. I was grateful that he passed in his sleep. He was 85 years old. He was still in good shape, and it was just his time. But that's it's still a very, very reliable show to end up getting non-biased opinions about news. So I just wanted to pass that along too. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kibble. Really quick, I just want to congratulate the South Lyon Unified Hockey Team. They are LVC champs. I'm pretty sure that's a three-peat. So very impressive for the team there. Reminder, because we won't see you again before this, is February 7th, South Line East at South Line High School. They do the girls and the boys varsity for a doubleheader. If you've never been and the weather is good enough to make it, please come out. It's an awesome time. It's the kids really get into it, and it's a lot of fun. And then really quickly, I do have to say a big thank you to my friends from PAC 39 here in town. Before the last meeting 2 weeks ago, they had asked me to come in and speak with them, and I did that. And before I left, they had invited me to come and partake in the Pinewood Derby this past Saturday. And so I was able to dig up my car from 30 years ago, and we had a ton of fun over there on Saturday. Pizza and pop, and the kids just running around, and it was a lot of fun. It brought back a lot of good memories for me. And they even sent me home with some hardware. There's a trophy in the mayor's office. So so thank you to PAC 39 for having me out for that. That was a lot of fun. I hope everyone has a great rest of the week. And with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a great